Here we go.
In 5, 4, 3.
Call to me, lands far away.
Elves have forests to protect.
We need to build a wall.
Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain. But we Harfoots have each other.
For I must now wander this wandering day.
We're safe.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel.
No.
Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
It is over.
Nothing is over! Nothing! You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
Darkness will march over the face of the earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
Everyone!
I am sorry, but their time has come.
The past is with us all. The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
This could be the beginning of a new era.
Away I must wander this wandering day.
To him finally being lionized as in the prime and his prime. Fuck.
Do it!
Shit.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams sleep. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Luke went from being... Oh, no. Welcome, Slayer Nation. I have some great news for you today. I hope you're all doing great. Nope, that didn't work. One more.
You have failed me for the last time.
Welcome, Slayer Nation. I hope...
If you're tired of starting over, stop giving up.
That is eating away at what you love in order for it to shine. And one man's vision is... Sometimes you don't have to make things better for them to be great again. You merely have to Okay. Hollywood continues to slow boil the culture and crazy. Well, right now, Spider-Man actor Andrew Garfield has stepped up and he's fighting motherfucker.
I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it.
And unbearded dwarves, but Prime didn't stop there. They stapled in intersectionality, individuality, biddiga-dig-bee, biddiga-dig-boo.
So it begins.
At my signal, unleash hell.
Ladies and gentlemen, George the Giant Slayer.
What's going on, everybody? How are you doing today? We are back and we are live. I hope you all revved up and ready to go. I've been waiting all week because today sci-fi is on the menu. We're going to look back at the recipes that made for some of the greatest shows in television and film sci-fi history. You know, like Star Trek, the original series, The Next Generation, Stargate, and so many more. We're talking about shows that we all grew up with. We all love their impact on society and culture. They did it in their own unique ways. But with their legendary characters and iconic storylines, they also imparted wisdom. They raised the bar. They became the gold standard, teaching everyone about leadership, about honor, hope, heroism. They taught us about teamwork. We had philosophical debates. We answered ethical questions, but it never felt like a TED Talk or like you were in this dark dystopian future with Mr. Rogers beating you over the head saying, pointing to the back of his head, how many lights are there? 4 or 5? You know, a few years ago, Hollywood even used to promote patriotism and fatherhood in a TNT cable series called Falling Skies, which was kind of like a retelling of the American Revolution, except this time you had aliens who were the oppressors. I mean, we had crews that were like families. We're talking about a brotherhood of battle-hardened brave hearts that would bound into the unknown. So we're going to revisit all that. And then we're going to get into the dark times when the Hollywood Hive decided to suck the soul right out of sci-fi for nothing more than a cricket-based soy snack. You know, one time, a long time ago, sci-fi series used to make you think that, you know, they were actually smarter than you. Today, it feels like we're the ones tutoring a short bus squad of window lickers, trying to teach them that their tugs aren't squeegees. So, are you ready? How are you feeling? Welcome, Slayer Nation. Let's get this show going and boldly go where no man has gone. Let's bring out our first panelists, the PopCast Brothers. Now, these guys aren't only just YouTubers, they are documentarians. They focus on sci-fi, but specifically on Star Trek. They know everything about Stargate, Falling Skies, Dark Matter, Killjoys. This guy is it. Brian, how you doing?
Not bad, my friend. How are you? I'm sorry my brother couldn't be here. He is extraordinarily sick, and I'm sorry he couldn't make. He really wanted to. He hit me up and said, "I'm not gonna make it today." And it moved to my chest, bro. And I'm like, "Whoa, okay." Calm down. Yeah, but he wanted to be here. But you get the other brother. You get the more wacky brother. He has more data, and I have more color. But it's okay.
Yeah, more color. Well, that's always good. We can use it on the show. Everybody, we're gonna have a good time. Let's now bring out Little Platoon. Now, if you haven't watched Little Platoon, his insight is sharp as a tack. This guy has a mind which matches his voice, and he's made some videos that are like an exploration into Hollywood. They're beautiful. Little Platoon, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, thank you, and thank you for having me back.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Always love having you here. So we're going to talk sci-fi today.
Looking forward to it. Yes, yeah, no, it's one of my favorite genres that some of the worst work has been done in. So somewhere between those two things, there's brilliant concepts in there somewhere.
It was, like I was saying earlier, it used to be that, I remember I used to look at some of these series and I was like, I thought I was dumb.
Right.
But today it's, well, Andre from Midnight's Edge could probably fill us in a lot better. Now, you know him from Midnight's Edge. They always have their finger on the pulse of Hollywood. No channel does it better. Andre, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. Well, the cold has slightly now reached my nose, so I may sound a tiny little bit congested. First time I've had like anything in like the last 3 years or so. But yeah, so we'll plow right through. Hopefully, it won't be too bad.
No,
I'm ready to talk
great.
some sci-fi, which we have never needed more, and which have never been in a worse place for just that reason, probably.
No, it's what's amazing is that we can see, like in the last week, you saw that Captain Kirk, William Shatner, has had to take on the EU because they're pushing this whole presentism. They want to strip out the boldly go where no man has gone before.
Yeah. Now it's to boldly go where no they them has gone before. No, actually, it's where no one has gone before.
Where no choose your pronouns here has gone before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. You can see this. What the Trek? EU chiefs target ban on gendered phrases, including iconic movie quotes. And why the EU was accused of attacking the English language back in 2022. I mean, how do you attack a film, a story, a franchise? They're trying to lead the way, trying to not only set imaginations free, but to inspire millions. And all of a sudden, it's like, nah, this language doesn't work for us.
Right. Yeah, when they said no man, they weren't referring to specifically men. There was no pronoun attached to that. It was mankind.
It was mankind. It was for everyone. But everyone now gets so picky in their bubbles. You know, they want to have their safe spaces. We're like, well, wait a minute. Mankind doesn't represent me because I'm a goldfish.
Because I'm otherkin. I identify as a North African wolf person.
You see some of these. You see some people going around, and there was someone. What was it? 4 weeks ago, or was it 6 weeks ago? Where they petitioned in Arizona to be recognized as a porpoise. A porpoise.
That might be the funniest thing to be recognized as.
A porpoise?
A porpoise. I don't even know. I don't even know what a porpoise looks like.
Kind of animal, but what kind of an animal is that in that case?
Porpoise.
The little marine mammal that lives underwater and eats seaweed, and they look kind of cute.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy.
Something you can't really.
It looks like a
identify
tiny little dolphin, right?
Yeah. But as so often, South Park was ahead of this by about a decade, because you got the episode where Carl's dad wants to become a dolphin because
That's right.
You know, the trans speciesism is the new thing.
And Kyle wanted to be African American.
He wants to be tall, so he wants to be black, so he can play basketball. That's the
Right.
yeah,
it's great.
But think about this. They're actually going. It's like the same thing that publishers wanted to do with Ian Fleming's James Bond books. You know, that they were editing them last year for the release in April. I mean, now you have it. The phrase made famous by Captain Kirk has a red cross next to it and a 61-page toolkit on gender-sensitive communications. I mean, do you think this is one of the things, this gender non-binary nonsense, that has caused the downfall of sci-fi, or is it just one of the pieces?
I'm going to say actually no. I think of all the genres which is best placed to tackle stuff like this, science fiction is the one.
100%.
You can find all kinds of really, really interesting, wacky, sometimes very, very thought-provoking, old, usually short stories back when we still had anthologies, which I think that's the decline of those is principally responsible for the decline in science fiction overall. But you used to have these wonderful ideas where and even some of the bizarre ones. Didn't Robert Heinlein write a book where he gets the main character wants to live forever, so I think he clones himself in the body of a younger girl who he then self-impregnates so he can carry on his own lifespan for eternity. And it all goes wrong, of course, because it's a baffling idea. But if you're going to do wacky things with reality, science fiction is absolutely the place to do it. It's just that we don't really take any interest in that. This is nothing about this is about the content of Star Trek. This is all about present dayism, as Shatner himself is complaining about. This is all, how do we interact with each other today in a way that appeases some European Union bigwig?
No, you're totally right. But in recent modern sci-fi, even television, we've seen something like that. I think it was season 2 of the Orville. Yeah, I think it was season 2. They had about a girl, and it was about this race, the Mocklins, who are all a male gendered race, all male. And we find out that actually they have females every once in a while that pop up, and they're usually forced to get a sex change to become male because they're a single species, single gender race, and they're considered a mutation. Well, then they have the two main characters have a child that is born female instead of male. And the argument that they have to go through is whether or not they're going to take her back to Mocklin to get a sex change. And it's actually quite compelling because they don't actually tell you what the right answer is. They show you both sides. They literally have a courtroom scene where they argue both sides, and they argue the benefits of having two genders. And just like regular sci-fi, they give you all the information in a sort of a wacky scenario with this alien species, and they never really conclude what the correct option was. But ultimately, the kid ends up getting a sex change because that planet is so gung-ho on that idea. And so you can still have science fiction that tackles modern day I guess whatever you want to call them, problems. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a ridiculous nonsense. But you can have sci-fi that tackles modern day problems without leaning one way or the other, the way sci-fi is famous for doing. But lately, these writers are cowards. They don't want to. They don't want to do something that's gonna cancel them on Tumblr or whatever social network is popular at the time. So they usually either refrain from taking a position, they stay with the narrative, whatever the message is, and they don't actually offer a compelling story that allows you to think through the problem in the first place, because they don't want their friends to give them a hard time at the next craft service party or whatever.
That's a very good point. I just want to say that episode you're referring to there of the Orville, I'd say that's the single best sci-fi we've actually had in the past decade. The Orville is the new Star Wars. It's a shame that it's now probably not coming back again, because that was really as good as it was going to be. And you also hit on the point right there. But right now, the takeover of Hollywood is so complete. There was such pushback against that episode in the crafts and all other areas. And this is the problem for sci-fi right now, that the people who need it the most are the ones who are taking over. And they don't even realize that they right now are the problem. And because the beauty with sci-fi, it has always been about, this is how you get a message across censorship. You tell a story about today and maybe give some warning from history and the past that applies to today, but you set it in a different world.
Right, but I mean, that's exactly what it used to do, wasn't it, Andre? I mean, we had it where, if you're talking about the original Trek, even Next Generations, we would tackle modern day problems by looking at the past, but through another lens, through an alien species or through some encounter. It didn't beat you over the head. I mean, today, the reality is that Hollywood is treating sci-fi like a proctologist at a pride parade. I mean, they've just totally annihilated it. But before we move on, what I'd really like to know is, what is each one of yours favorite sci-fi shows? Like, so I can understand you more. Like, what is your benchmark from the past and today?
For me, it's Stargate. I think I told you earlier.
Yeah.
Stargate's I love Star Trek. Everyone knows we talk about a lot of Star Trek. And Star Trek is what I started watching when I was young. That was like the first foray into sci-fi was the original series and later TNG. I fell in love with Voyager because I was a young man, and 7 and 9 is super hot. And what happened was I watched Stargate the movie in like the early 90s, and I lost it with the entire concept. The concept was so fascinating to me. There was no ships. There was something about it that we had not seen before with the whole gate travel, and it was the hero's journey. Like Colonel O'Neill was going to kill himself because his son had killed himself with his gun, and he's sitting there playing with the trigger. The safety's off. He's gonna end his life, and he hears Colonel O'Neill, and it's the Air Force coming to this retired guy's house one last time. And they need a favor, and they know that he's distraught and he'll probably take the mission. So this guy takes the mission knowing that he's planning on ending his life beyond the gate to save what he thinks he's saving the Earth, right? From this alien, species. And then you have this complete opposite version of him, the academic, Daniel Jackson, who completely different in every way, becomes friend. They form an alliance together. They become friends throughout this adventure, and he convinces him that they're good and that his life is worth living. It's the ultimate hero's journey.
It is.
So when they eventually made the series, I was all about it. Even that, though, that very first episode, you have Amanda Carter, the token woman on the show, and God bless Samantha Carter. Amanda Tapping, the actress, really was able to play it correctly. But that first episode that they eventually cut out, when she goes, just because my internal organs are on the inside, my sexual organs are on the inside instead of the other. They were trying to feminist it up a little bit.
But you know what? They did it well. They did it well. I mean, even look at that right there. You hit it. You hit the nail on the head. You're talking about the hero's journey. Even in the movie, where you had when he was waiting, when O'Neill was sitting here wanting to die.
Right.
They had it in the series. But the moment, the very second that his country needed him, it's like, okay, you know, it's like knock yourself out of this. You got to go do the job.
Got to go handle it. Yeah, it's
a
beautiful story. And then he came back because Daniel Jackson said it's not over. Like, he literally convinced him. First off, these people don't deserve to die, and it's not over. Like, you still have work to do. It's a great episode. And he left Daniel Jackson there to take care of the people. When SG-1 actually popped up, I love what they did because someone came through the gate, a different Goa'uld, took one of their members that were just sitting in the gate room. It's all boarded up. There's like a big old sheet over the gate.
Yeah, that's right, the sheet. And all of a sudden the smoke starts going, and yeah.
And so they get Colonel O'Neill in there like, I thought you blew up the place, because he went back and told the Air Force that he dropped the nuke,
right,
and that he made it back in time. That they said he told him that Daniel Jackson basically sacrificed himself. In reality, they buried the gate. So when they popped through, they sent in the tissue boxes, because Daniel Jackson, the entire movie, kept blowing his nose. It was just a really cool. They were able to capture the original feel of the movie, but then add so much more to it. Add so much more to the characters. And for probably like 5 or 6 seasons, I think they really knocked it out of the park. They faltered a little bit for a couple seasons. Ultimately,
that happens to everyone. That happens to everyone. I mean, but I think Richard Dean Anderson pulled it off like Kurt Russell. It was a nice, smooth transition.
It was.
But again, what did you have? Heroism, teamwork, courage, even the know-it-all. When you had Amanda Tapping's character, look at her. Even though they were trying to do the whole, fourth wave radical feminism, it didn't work. You saw them bring her back. She was just an intelligent female character.
And you watch interviews with Amanda Tapping, and she's sitting there, and she goes, she could tell what they're trying to do, and her actual father had been in the military, and she's like, this is not how it would work. So she steered that character as much as she could in the direction she thought it would be. And there was a military unit. There was military reverence. They would talk to each other with titles. They listened. It worked the same way Star Trek worked in the first, in TOS and TNG, and Voyager. It was less about the message and more about the hero's journey and the teamwork, and people respected each other's position. That I think a lot of sci-fi has sort of lost that. They've gotten so far into the personal aspect of it. What are these personal characters, and what are their personal problems and their personal truths and whatever, blah blah, trying to emulate society and gain new fans, what they think is society. But in reality, they're removing the hero's journey, and they're making it about the individual and not about the whole.
I agree. Little Platoon, what's yours? Like, when you see this deconstructionism, it's like, when I first read Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, I thought that was brilliant. But I think a part of that, Hollywood took a message, and it also applies to sci-fi. They went into this phase where we're going to deconstruct every single hero, and then we're going to remove heroism. We're going to remove teamwork.
Yeah, and I think that's part of quite a long trend. And as so often the case, a lot of things went very badly wrong in the 1960s. But you had Isaac Asimov writing in the 1950s that he was worried that science fiction was going in this direction where many of the newer writers, and he was talking about people coming up in the 1960s and 70s, were of the opinion that the science part of science fiction was fundamentally a bad thing, and the society building part of science fiction, which is of course inextricable from any project like Foundation or Dune or anything like that, is also a bad thing. And what was happening was, in his mind, this gradual limiting of human horizons. It's this kind of fundamental irony, is that we've never known more about everything, and yet we have never been less interested in everything. And as time goes on through the 1960s, even Dune to an extent is a reaction to Foundation, which places way more emphasis on people and the individual, and their sort of the innate goodness, or not innate goodness, but the innate inviolability of the individual, as opposed to something like Foundation, which is very much about the grand plan for a great society. But after the 1960s and 70s, you get this even more stark and fast-paced decline into this individualism. And I think Star Wars, for all Star Wars is always going to be my favorite thing ever. Right. Star Wars is kind of the ultimate victory of this thing, where science fiction has stopped being science fiction. What does Star Wars do that Dune and Foundation, for example, don't do? Star Wars is a character story, first and foremost. It has the hero's journey, but it's fantasy elements. Fantasy elements are the thing that really sell. They're incredibly popular, and that's what most of the audience will flock to see. So after Star Wars' fantastic success, everything that comes after that is really just trying to emulate Star Wars. And all they really do then is to say, well, put the hero's journey in absolutely everything. We don't really have to think too much through the world construction, the story we're trying to tell. There's no speculation involved in this science fiction. It's not science fiction at all. It's just another redressing of a personal story. And that sort of then declines yet further again when you get to the modern day, when everything is just about, well, what sells most quickly? Let's just do Star Wars again, reskin it, new character, Rey Skywalker, and it's all going to be about personal victories. It's your personal glory. It's how great you are as the individual. And if you inhabit this Mary Sue of a character, then you've enjoyed your story, kind of thing. And even the better recent science fiction, there's some, but not very much. I'd say like Hugh Howey, who does Silo, which was okay in terms of a book series. He's done a few other things as well. But these are all, Beacon 32 is another one of his, which I quite liked. But all of these things are about the person. They're all about you. None of this is really science fiction. Everything is always about how are you responding to the situation that the author has just decided to throw you into. And consequently, we're not getting very much by way of what I would call science fiction anymore from the West. It's different in the East. You've got things like the Three-Body Problem, which is not coincidentally written by someone with a very similar background to Isaac Asimov, an engineer by trade, who's very interested in the science part of science fiction and wants to have grand concepts and speculation and all of this. And that's one of those things which we are increasingly lacking. But as a whole, I prefer going back to the original question, because I'm conscious I've just rambled on.
No.
The original question, any science fiction that is speculative, that applies ideas and philosophy and is not just about personal identity, will get immediate plus points from me. So I'm thinking stuff, even like Ghost in the Shell is an animated series.
Yeah,
has really fantastic concepts. It does those really well. It's about applying near future technology and seeing how society responds to that and how our perception of society responds to that. And it's not all about, isn't it great that the major is a woman? They're all
right. I'm tired of that. I mean, I'm tired of that. But I think one of the problems, I think you hit that in a way where I could see almost like modern Star Trek, like Discovery. I'm not talking about Star Trek Picard season 3. I love season 3. I know a lot of people do, a lot of people don't. But I feel like a lot of Star Trek today and a lot of science fiction is trying to turn their franchise into Star Wars. But they forgot that Star Wars is already dead because they took a boy brand and tried to turn it into a girl brand. And now you have these other franchises trying to become that. And I'm like,
well,
what are you emulating?
Star Trek's a really good example, I think, of the thing I'm talking about, because throughout the 1960s, I would say Star Trek is science fiction, traditionally defined. What's it about? It's about the application of philosophy to a future setting and asking questions from that future setting about the present day world. It's telling a speculative story about the limits of technology and about the limits of humanity and interacting with that technology. Throughout the 60s, that was true. The Next Generation in the 90s has that as well. Now, what happens when J.J. Abrams reboots the Star Trek films? There's no science fiction in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. They are just Star Wars done again with a different skin on it. That's all it is. And I love Star Wars, but Star Wars is a unique thing. It does that incredibly well because it has very strong core cast of characters, and it's fundamentally a character story which brings in various fantasy and science fiction elements. But principally, it's a human story, and it does that very, very well in the first 3 films, at least. But you can't replicate that very easily. You can't just say, well, all Star Wars is laser gun, spaceships, lens flare, inevitably in action scenes, because then that's just any given J.J. Abrams film, and that's not what science fiction is or should be.
I agree completely. Andre, what about you? Your favorite?
Yeah, well, first I'd say that I don't even consider Star Wars to be science fiction in the first place. In my opinion, Star Wars is fantasy. It belongs right next to Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, because it's hero's journey, and hero's journey is something that, to me at least, is intrinsically linked with fantasy. That is the story that you have in fantasy. Whereas, to me, science fiction is always more about society and the human condition, which is not something that you have that much of in Star Wars. I mean, you may have it, but it's coincidental. To me, my favorite science fiction is actually in book form, and it predates Star Wars. It's the writings of Asimov, as already mentioned by the Little Platoon. First and foremost, though, the writings of Arthur C. Clarke. He is my favorite sci-fi author, and Frank Herbert.
Oh, Frank Herbert, yeah. That's mine, Dune.
Yeah.
And William Gibson, sorry.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And now we're like going into the cyberpunk era of a science fiction. But on screen, I would say that traditionally, as I was growing up, it's Star Trek. Star Trek was the best representation of science fiction on screen. The Dune movies, they were movies. They kind of like skipped over all of the stuff that truly made Frank Herbert's writing great science fiction. I would say that in the past decade, actually a little bit more than a decade since I go that far back, the best we've had is the Orville, which did what the Star Trek did at its best, and an adaptation of one of the best sci-fi comics ever written, Dread.
Dread. Oh,
yeah, for the best adaptation of where society currently is headed and the ailments that we currently face right now, like really stringent social commentary. Dread is your go-to right now. It doesn't explore any wider themes of like transhumanism or what if this or what if that or genders, just really where are we headed? What society are we heading towards? Dread is the warning.
Well, it is. You're talking about, again, 15-minute cities. You know, what do they call them? The megalopolises, where you have 20 to 30 million people. Megacities. That's right. Because I keep remembering, I love the second Dread, not the one with Stallone. It was campy.
I'm talking exclusively about the 2012 Dread right now, which is the literal adaptation of the comic book. The 1995 movie. Technically, it is a science fiction movie. Technically, it is an adaptation of the comic books. But what it did, it took like 6-7 great storylines, which should have made up for 6-7 movies, and it blended them all together. And all of it made way for the fact that it was a Stallone vehicle. Everything was shaped around the fact that this is a Stallone vehicle, starring Stallone as a Stallone stock character dealing with Stallone drama in a Judge Dredd makeover. And that's kind of like what it was. Now, it was a very, very good makeover, and like some of the special effects in the background, especially like the robotics, prosthetics, I mean, they were amazing. And the ABC Warrior is the best robot we're ever going to have on screen.
Oh, yeah. But, I like that.
In terms of the themes that actually are explored in the Judge Dredd comics, and those comics, of course, they have varied over the years, depending on who's the writer, depending on who's the editor. But at their best, I mean, they're up there with Arthur C. Clarke and everything in terms of both themes and execution and even with the commentary on society, because what they said and why those comics, when you read the ones from the 70s, 80s, I mean, they practically predict our present.
Mm-hmm.
And what they said they were doing, the authors were basically, they just took the trends that were at the time and they just really energized them. They took the trends to their extreme.
Well,
did you actually ended up something with predictive power? That's what the movie did as well.
Did you like Arthur? Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, no, I was going to say very quickly on that point. It's one of the ways, particularly with any strong social commentary science fiction, there's a very easy way to tell which of these are good and which of these are bad as social commentary, and that's precisely because so many of them aspire to have predictive power. And what can you do with anything which is basically a predictive model? You can look at the world today and you can go back to the things that were written 50 years ago and you can say which of these more closely corresponds with the state of affairs in which we find ourselves. And that's why there are some things, I think Dread is a good shout, but you can go back to Brave New World and Aldous Huxley and you can look at that and you can say, well, between the eternal debate between Brave New World and 1984, which of them has the greater predictive force, and therefore which is better as social commentary on the state of Western world today? You know, I would argue that makes Brave New World infinitely superior to 1984, just because we so more closely resemble where Aldous Huxley saw society going than where Orwell did. But that's one of the many things that is great about science fiction, is the fact that it tries so often to predict and so often gets it right.
Well, it does. I mean, look at Altered Carbon. Did anybody watch Altered Carbon?
Oh, yeah,
not season 2. That was complete.
No, season 1. Season 1 was awesome.
Season 1 to me is what I can think of is the latest, greatest sci-fi.
Yeah,
outside of something like the first 2 seasons of The Expanse.
And so unique too.
Unique, but in many ways, it's a projection of what certain segments in society, what they call it the WEF, New World Order, whatever they want to label themselves today, of where they want to go for a certain group, you know, the meths and the ordinary people. But the science fiction, the characters, because when I really loved when the team got together, and I keep thinking that's missing, which makes me want to know, what do you think makes sci-fi great? You know, what is its heart? Is it the human element? Is it the technology? You know, the fun with phasers? Is it the morality story wrapped into it? What do y'all think is to each of you?
As far as Altered Carbon, a lot of it was like the journey of the hero's journey, sure, but like also him connecting with that team, like you just mentioned, was actually pretty awesome. The humanization of the hotel AI was badass.
Yeah, beautiful Poe. Come on,
yeah.
It's like I was rooting for him the whole time. Like
the whole time,
yeah.
That character ended up being for me one of the best characters in the show. Such a cool character. The way they introduced him, the way they made him almost like they said, well, these old AIs they get attached to people, and that's one of the problems. People don't use them anymore.
Yeah,
but for this guy, he needed it. Really cool the way they set that up. I love what they did with the kid that was in there, and the whole swapping to like to the flying whatever it was.
What do you mean the satellite?
Yeah, what was it? The cloud platform.
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, and the kid transfers her consciousness in there, and she's able to get revenge. Just overall a really awesome story about. I mean, to me, the flashbacks were the most boring part.
I agree. I didn't like those. I wish I could make an edited version with maybe one of those to give a little bit of the backstory, but then cut the rest out.
You just need context. I just need context and then move on.
Right. What I think is to me, it's like modern sci-fi falls into two categories. There's very few things that are original. I thought Altered Carbon was original. It took a lot of inspiration, I think, from William Gibson. But I think most other shows, whether you're talking about Westworld, some aspects Foundation, because I don't think they followed the books closely.
No, they definitely did not.
But it's like they're all kind of decaffeinated Blade Runner.
I will say, though, that they did find another very, very intriguing plot element with basically the Emperor being reincarnated versions of himself, always appearing in threes. Mm-hmm. That's a really, really stunning plot device, which I think
the most interesting thing in that entire show is the thing that isn't in the book. But the stuff they do, which is in the book, and then they butcher, is generally not particularly good, which is annoying because I think that's more of a fear of originality and creativity. I think if they'd done what they really should have done, which is to say we are creating a brand new science fiction IP predicated on this idea of these eternally reincarnated tripartite emperors, and it's going to be a new science fiction franchise, I think that would have put it in stronger stead. It wouldn't have been shackled to source material that it didn't particularly want to convey. But if they'd done that, they probably wouldn't have had it greenlit by Apple because it wouldn't have had the name attached to it. So it's tricky to get those new IPs off the ground. On the very rare occasion the new science fiction IP does emerge, unfortunately, they tend to be quite lacking. I think The Creator is a really good example of this. It's new sci-fi, fine. It's not a sequel. That's great. What are you going to do with it? So you just did sort of like Vietnam, but with robots who aren't even really very much robots. It's so shallow as a story with no real interest in the ideas that it's trying to put across. It just looks vaguely pretty. So that there's a lack of new stuff, but there's also the inability to get genuinely good new stuff off the ground, which is hamstringing the genre.
Yeah, I couldn't get past the first 3 episodes. So I don't know. Have y'all watched it? Have y'all watched it up to current day?
Foundation, yes.
I'm in the process of catching up when I have time in between other things. And what I'm the most drawn to is the Emperor and the triumvirate of the Emperor. So yeah, that's kind of like what has me drawn in. Everything else, it's just around that. So it kind of seems like they really needed to have made an original series with just that as the main draw. But as you say, Little Platoon, then they wouldn't have gotten funding without the brand name. So it's unfortunately one of the realities of adaptations and Hollywood as it is right now.
Yeah, it just didn't pull me in. It just didn't pull me in. I usually give a series about 3 to 5 episodes, And if I'm not hooked and I'm not on board, like Silo, actually, I was more interested in that than I was in Foundation. I mean, Altered Carbon is one of the few series. That's why I keep bringing it up. I always will. From minute one, I was hooked. I was right there.
Same,
It was the same thing with The Expanse. I mean, it just right in. I was like, there I am. I mean, The Expanse to me, the first 2 to 3 seasons were more beauty.
Yeah.
Spot on.
My favorite author is Isaac Asimov, and I was really looking forward to the Foundation series. And it was just, for me, it was just too slow. It was slow. It didn't suck me in. It didn't remind me, of the books. It didn't scratch that itch. Now I read the books when I was in high school, so maybe it'd been a long time. But I feel like they've really never done Isaac Asimov correctly. He's one of the greatest science fiction authors ever. And every time there's an Asimov story that they try to make into a movie or TV show, it's just sort of lackluster.
There's a tragedy here. The most literal one, the BBC's adaptation of The Caves of Steel, the very first robot story, is lost because they showed it once and they taped it over.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
and the robot series are great. I want to see the Elijah Bailey. I want to see like the do robots dream of electric sheep. I would love to see that story where you have a human or a robot actually working together. Like that'd be so badass. I'm not sure why they haven't mined that yet for content, considering they've gone back to recreate, several other stories 1,500 times, but they won't touch all. What about the last question? Like that would make an amazing miniseries. I don't know. There's so many good.
I think it's a matter of that the current day of executives, they're not familiar with it. To them, it's not a brand. It's not something they are aware of. Remember, the people who do greenlighting right now, they're not older guys who know their stuff. They're younger people who still honestly should be bringing coffee to the property.
Right.
They are the ones that have greenlighting powers now. People
Right.
in their 20s, early 30s at their oldest. These are historyless buffoons that don't know anything.
Right.
I mean, that's why everything we get sucks now. It's not just that the writers are incompetent. It's not just that the executives at the highest levels are WEF chills. It is also that the people with greenlighting powers are historyless buffoons. It's like the perfect storm of everything. And that's why, like, Asimov, what the hell is that? They don't know what that is. They don't know what potential is in it for that. How can we change that to be a story about DEI? Then you might.
They're going to go, hell yeah. Why not? Yeah, they're going to be all for it. I mean, I think Hollywood's
a robot.
Well, that's what they did.
What if the robot identifies as a human?
Where's the robot in the dress? Oh, come on. Like, no. But
well, of course, that's the pitch, though, because then you go with the transhuman stuff. Then they actually might be interested in it.
Oh, they're going to give you the biggest budget ever. I mean, we got Adam Krigler is here in the chat. Hell, Adam.
Hey, Adam.
From Bay Staff. If you're free, you're welcome to come on. But I think one of the things that Hollywood does today, especially when it comes to sci-fi, is just they've lost focus. And when I mean focus, the creativity aspect. And I think one of the reasons is because reading. I think reading is integral to understanding sci-fi, to creating it. I mean, where are the people who've read William Gibson? Where are the people who understand Roddenberry's original? Where are the people who have a foundation, whether it's H.G. Wells or Asimov or Clarke? I mean, I found this, in 2016, there were organizations that started to ban sci-fi books. I mean, they were going around the world, going library after library, because they didn't have what they said was the proper, rainbow representation. And they're saying this isn't allowed. It's what Shatner is fighting today with the presentism. And then you talk about a month ago, you had articles coming out which saying we need more original sci-fi. It's like, okay, wait a minute. You want more original sci-fi, but at the same time, you have groups that you're supporting or funding in one way or another that are actually banning books, banning sci-fi. It's like
there is alongside that, and probably I think a greater problem is you talk about where are all the people who are reading, where are all the people who are writing is a very big problem, and there's a big economic change which has taken place in science fiction publishing, which is making it much, much harder for any original material to really get off the ground, even before you get to the question of cancellation. It used to be the case throughout sort of the 20s through 50s through 60s even, that you had science fiction stories which began as, you know, serialized works in small little magazines. And then if they were really good, they got picked up for anthologies. And then if they were really good, they got span off into their own books. And this is how many of the great writers, including Clarke and Asimov, and I think Frank Herbert as well, got started. That's all gone now. For a number of years, well, decades at this point, it's been assumed that there isn't really any money in small-scale book publishing. So the anthologies are pretty much dying out. There's no real great collections there. And the old serialized newspapers can't exist because the newspapers don't exist. So there's no pathway to the old style recognition within it. There is supposedly an alternative, which of course is the vast and easy availability of self-publishing. And this is how some of the more successful recent science fiction authors, I've mentioned Hugh Howey already, got started. But that doesn't really replicate the old machinery, because the great advantage you used to have when you were coming up as a science fiction writer to get any kind of recognition is you were working with editors pretty much all the way through. You had to work with an editor to get it into a serialized form. You had to work with editors to get it into an anthology form. So you were learning the tricks of the trade from people who its job was just to read science fiction and pick out the best and improve the rest. Now, with self-publishing, there is nothing to mimic that. So you're lucky if you happen to be good because you're already quite good, then you might be able to self-publish. And if you're incredibly lucky, people will notice. But for the majority of people who are trying to get into writing original IPs, they don't have any guidance and they don't have any experience, and there's no avenue for them to get that experience anymore. And so that will eventually, and is already feeding into the decline of original IPs on television, because there isn't anything original to adapt anymore.
But how do you ban? I mean, look at some of these lists. They're going around library to library, school to school, banning Huxley, Orwell. You got Heinlein. You know, one of my favorite Heinlein books, not the Starship Troopers, was Stranger in a Strange Land. But here we go after The Day After Tomorrow. I mean, we're talking about foundational works that not only expand the imagination, but that give people the ability to critically think. Fahrenheit 451. I mean, it's just, and the list goes on and on.
You can see why people who really like banning books would like to ban Fahrenheit 451, though. I mean, that would be my first target. You get rid of the strongest opposition first.
You know, ban books about banning books. It's just the way that they're going. But but what's happening is you start getting people like Shatner. I mean, take a look at what he said earlier in this week. I mean, Shatner, I thought, was brilliant. Once again, Captain Kirk is being Captain Kirk. Presentism at work again. Why start at Trek? Isn't it better to start at the beginning and redo foundation materials such as the Magna Carta, religious writings, works of Shakespeare, before worrying about a silly TV show opening that reflects social commentary at the time? If people are offended by 6 seconds of dialogue recorded in 1966 without a modicum of understanding of the social issues at the time, there's bigger issues that they need to deal with first, like educating themselves. I think he says it right there. I mean, this week you had in New Hampshire, the citizens were freaked out. They opened up, I kid you not, I thought I was reading an article from the Babylon Bee, a diaper spa. Yeah. I mean, for adults, a diaper spa. It's like, I'm like, thank God I live in Texas. We know diapers belong on babies. But 2 months ago, they were saying that science fiction is a waste of time. They wanted to remove more science fiction books from schools because they're saying it's a waste of time. It has no applicability to today. And I'm like, did you understand that William Gibson, when he wrote Cyberpunk, when he wrote Neuromancer, was coining the term Matrix 2 years after, the modern day internet for everyday people was accessible. Right. I mean, somebody who laid the foundations for what we're experiencing today in society through science fiction, through cyberpunk.
Well, yeah, there were, and there's also the fact that people like that will probably be tweeting these opinions through the internet, which is made possible largely because of geosynchronous orbital communication satellites, which were popularized in some tellings invented by guess who, Arthur C. Clarke. Popularized then in his books. Like science fiction, when it's done incredibly well, is really just an instruction manual for how the next 40 years will operate. It's the most applicable thing, not the least applicable thing. But you can see people who are solely obsessed with the most present-day minutiae of identity find science fiction pointless and supererogatory, because it's conceptual and it deals with the grander scheme of history. And it has a regard for history in its best forms. I mean, you wouldn't have Foundation or Dune or indeed Star Wars if you didn't have Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Like, these people don't have, as I think has been mentioned before, any historical understanding or appreciation, but they don't have the conceptual mindset for it either, because they're just concerned with the latest way to score points on Twitter or X or whatever we call it now. They're not concerned with storytelling or concepts or society or philosophy or anything that makes science fiction the most relevant of all the genres.
It is, but we had those. What's amazing is the fact that we had these philosophical debates. I mean, the original Star Trek series, at the point during the Cold War, we had a Russian at the helm. I mean, they're talking about racism going on in society, but you had Uhura. I mean, all of these were woven into the stories. Again, legendary characters addressing issues, except they weren't beating you over the head going, hey, safe spaces, we need safe spaces. No, they're like, watch the show. They tackled it in a way which wove you, brought you into the tapestry of it, where you're walking away going, wow, that's fantastic. I want to share it. Because I used to think that certain sci-fi, unless you experienced it, was more like trying to explain a dream to someone who obviously didn't have it. You're like, okay, you have to watch it. You have to participate it. And then we go years later to something like Firefly, which I loved Firefly.
Yeah, so did I.
But, got canceled way too early. And then you go to Dark Matter, which I found a couple of years ago. I don't know if y'all have seen it. Dark Matter, it's about a crew who had their memories wiped.
By Joseph Malazzi.
I mean, again, great writers.
Love it.
And when you look at the people who are writing it and who were bringing, and even some of the production staff for Dark Matter, they had a background. They actually had lives. They weren't, somebody who didn't know anything about life. They didn't know anything about creativity or imagination. They had studied it. It's kind of like Lucas said. How do you have modern filmmakers today try to replicate what some of he didn't say masters, but for lack of another word, what masters did in the past when they don't have the foundation for it? I mean, you had J.J. Abrams. I was watching Brian's video, and how many times did you show him where before he got Star Trek, he's like, I didn't like Star Trek. I didn't know anything about Star Trek. I couldn't care about Star Trek. I couldn't get into it. I'm like, then why the fuck
interest.
Are you taking the job?
Right.
Like Nia DaCosta from Marvel. It's
because he likes money.
Right. But see, that cool. Money's great. Except I believe you have to love the material. Or you have to be such a professional that you engage with the material in such a way where you understand it because you're getting paid to do so, and you can honor it. Nia DaCosta, same problem. I will beat that like a dead horse. Had no reason to be able to be helming a Marvel film when she despised its core character of Captain America, viewing him as a villain, and most of the other non-DEI appropriate cast. But I'm trying to think, Andre. I mean, think about it. What would you, Andre, say is like at the heart of good sci-fi?
Well, there are different kinds of sci-fi. I would say one type is about ideas. Like this is, for instance, the Arthur C. Clarke type of sci-fi, which isn't really so much about the human experience, at least not first and foremost, but this is about cool ideas and concepts that you also have some of in Star Trek. But I think that at its best, sci-fi is about us. It is about learning lessons of the past so that we may build a better future. And in order to actually get that message across, because sometimes that means that some people are going to have to adopt some lessons which may be uncomfortable and triggering, to use common day parlance, which is why the message is sometimes decoded through other people and other times, so that only later you see, oh shit, this is actually about me. I'm the bad guy here. Maybe I need to do something. That's when sci-fi is at its best, absolute best. And I also think that is why sci-fi is threatening, why it's a genre that is under attack, and also a big part of the reason why William Shatner and Where No Man Has Gone Before is under attack from the EU. To me, that's actually really insidious. I can answer what Shatner said in that tweet. Why don't they do Magna Carta? Well, because no one today knows what the Magna Carta is.
That's
sad.
Few,
at least.
That's
sad.
sad.
It's a sad state, but people today are historyless. Because if they weren't, we wouldn't be in the situation we are right now.
No, we wouldn't be. But then we go back to again reading.
Exactly.
Reading,
But anyway,
history, education. No. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he asked a key question in there, and when you look through the replies, you can see people aren't commenting that way. But
yeah, no, they're like, what the hell is a Magna Carta? I haven't seen that movie.
Is that a movie? Is that a TV series?
Exactly.
I think one of the great sci-fi series, 'cause I would categorize it as sci-fi, was Falling Skies. I don't know if y'all saw that. It was a few years ago.
I remember it. Yeah, I remember it.
I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing ever, but it was, I think, the last time that Steven Spielberg, because he was executive producing, more or less before he bent the knee to the Wuhan virus. I mean, you're talking about retelling the American Revolution, where aliens are the oppressors, but they actually promoted the nuclear family and fatherhood, even to some degree faith, which, shit. When was the last time you saw a sci-fi show promote patriotism of any kind for anyone? I mean, it was a stunning series.
Yeah. But moving on with why it's so insidious, what they're doing with Star Trek right now, why they're going after Kirk, why they're going after the saying where no man has gone before. Well, unlike Magna Carta, people have heard about Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk is someone that men want to be and women just want. Simple as that. He's an example of toxic masculinity, so he needs to be taken down a few notches. He's problematic, which is why CBS are trying to erase him from all things Star Trek right now. Whenever you see kind of like a picture of all captains and anything that's supposed to represent Star Trek, Shatner's Kirk is more often than not missing from those things. And also this mere saying, where no man has gone before. It's aspirational. It is something that brings out the absolute best in humans.
I agree.
Lust to discover. So why would the EU not try to attack that in the most insidious way possible by changing the language? Because that's what you do. They change language. And this is what commies do. They change the language so that they may pervert it and just subvert society that way, little by little.
Kill the symbols, kill the heroes, basically, is what you're saying. Yeah, kill the symbols, kill the heroes. I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's a sad state, but I think there's also at the same time a groundswell. I mean, we notice it on the streams when we look at the chats, whether it's people like the Basco scenario, Radioactive. We have so many people who have woken up, have gotten on board, who are saying, you know what, I want to be entertained, but B, I don't like what's going on in society. I want to stop this nonsense. And so they're withholding their dollars, they're holding them back. They're learning about what's going on. It's like I read the other day that the new Star Trek movie is moving forward with Michelle Yeoh, the Section 31.
Section 31.
Ryan, you and I were talking about that, Michelle Yeoh.
Yep.
And I'm like sitting there going, okay, aren't we talking about a lady who ate sentient life?
Yeah, she ate Kelpians.
Kelpians, that's because I didn't watch.
Her own slaves. She'd be like, bring me food. And just on a whim, I'm going to eat that guy.
But that's their hero, to set up this covert society that's going to have membership IDs, badges, like, hey, we're secret warriors. I mean, it's like, even
doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. But that's where they've lost the plot. If they just tried to replicate what was in the past, even if they were just to reboot it straight, it would be, I think, more successful. And it was pushing some of the same messages. It just wasn't beating people over the head.
Right.
And we also have, I just found out, we have Meyer Burnett is here. I know he loves Star Trek as much.
RMB.
You mentioned Star Trek and I had to show up.
I know, it's like Beetlejuice. Instead it's Meyer Burnett. Meyer Burnett, and here he is, Star Trek. How you doing?
Don't get me started about this. No, but you did already, because I was sitting off stage going, Rrr. First of all, I don't think there's a better indication of the lack of understanding of Star Trek than how they treated Section 31.
Yeah.
I mean, especially what was so great when they introduced Section 31 in DS9, it was just one guy. It was just Sloan, played by one of Bill Sadler, one of our great character actors. He's a great actor, and he would just show up like Dr. Bashir would wake up in his bed, and Sloan was just sitting next to him in a chair. Hello.
But that's perfect. But that was perfect.
It was the greatest thing. And what did they do? They gave Section 31 a headquarters. They gave them ships. They gave them membership cards, special uniforms, badges, and they see what they did was they decided, oh, well, they're like the CIA.
Yeah.
And they had to make it analogous to something they already understood. And the thing is, it was better that Section 31, are they even real? They later said it was part of the Federation Charter, but it was much
Enterprise,
more, yeah, it was much more clever when they didn't define what it was. And the question is, should we be working for these people at all? And they really showed up during the Dominion War. And then, to turn Michelle Yeoh's, by the way, remember, it's the character from the Mirror Universe.
The Mirror Universe, right. But the thing is, come on, you nailed it right there. It would be like me. I'm wearing my hat from Picard Season 3, right? But you don't have Section 31 going, hello, I'm Section 31, here to serve all your clandestine needs. How may I help you? In DS9, the guy was spooky. It's like he didn't exist.
Right. Well, that was the whole point. They had no footprint.
Correct.
And the thing is, the question should be, would the Federation ever sanction such a group?
Yeah.
And the idea should never be, the question should never be answered.
Right, of course, because it should be a group. I've always thought it should be a group of rogues. Like they didn't get approval from the Federation and they did it on their own, like for the greater good. What was the episode where Cisco goes back to Earth, right? And they're trying to figure out who is that rebel section group.
The changelings. I mean, how many changelings that home front?
Right. That was it. It was the changelings. They're like, how are we going to know who's who? And they had to set up all the monitors and
it was a great episode. And one of it, when he finally meets one of the changelings, he goes, do you know how many changelings there are on Earth? 4. And we've created this much chaos.
Great.
I mean,
yeah.
And that was
terrifying.
Yeah. And that was the same with, but this is the frustration that I have with modern Star Trek. Is a lot of Star Trek was obviously created by people that Roddenberry himself were in the military. Mm. And so the military command structure, they have ranks. And one of the things that they've abandoned in modern Star Trek is all of that military structure. The captain just fraternizes with everybody, ensigns, lieutenants. Not that he can't, but it's like, here, come to my apartment. Or come to my stateroom, and I'll come to my quarters, and I'll cook for all of you. Mm. And you bring in the principal cast, even though a captain wouldn't. Where's your command crew? Where's the people that you consult with? Where's your department heads? There is no sense of decorum or military. The command structure doesn't exist. And so it's really difficult. Nowadays people are like, well, there is no military in Star Trek. No, it's a quasi-military organization, hence the ranks. You couldn't run a ship like that without strict discipline. And
hold on one second, because we got someone else who wants to join the conversation. To say that, Adam,
hey guys,
here. How you doing, my friend?
What's
from
up,
Basic Mondays.
Yeah, well, I don't. Thank you. It's great to be here. I don't want to, get off topic. I love what you guys are saying. I love Star Trek, and it makes me think. My wife lived on a ship for a long time and boating around the South Pacific for a long time, and there was a captain, and there was people who made the scheduling, and they had like different people who did different things, but the captain kind of delegated to certain people who would then delegate to others. So it's a natural thing for people to want, or not people, just ships in general, to run efficiently. You need that kind of hierarchy, that structure.
Yes.
So even though I get it, the argument is, the Federation wasn't a military, it was an exploration, group, whatever, and it still needed to function, right? And just a ship that goes around the South Pacific still had a hierarchy where people had their what they did, and the captain didn't go around to everyone. Granted, it was like 30 people, I believe, max. So you'd think How many people are on that Enterprise? Easily.
Depends
Which Enterprise?
Which Enterprise?
You know, Kirk's
That's a good
Enterprise
point.
about 430.
That's a good point. That's a good
1,000 people on the
What was
D.
the D? 2,000?
No, about 1,000.
I thought the
Right,
D
right.
had 2,000. Okay. It
Yeah.
wasn't. All right.
But if you actually look at, there's some really interesting videos on YouTube that show if there's only 1,000, they have like what 1,000 people would look like standing on the top of the saucer section of the D, and it's only a small square.
Yeah.
That you would barely see anybody on that ship, which makes sense because so much of it would be automated.
True.
But the thing about Star Trek was that military structure was something I think the audience needs to understand how the idea of a ship working. I mean, even like a cruise ship is not a military ship, but like you just said, Adam, the idea that you have to have a hierarchy on the ship. There's and it's a strict hierarchy because it has to be, because otherwise their lives would be at stake.
Yeah, and the captain of that cruise ship wouldn't go around to make sure the janitor is doing his job correctly, right? Or that the food is being cooked at the appropriate time. Like, that's not the captain's job, right? The captain is to make sure the ship is going in the right direction and that everyone who controls every different compartment of the ship is doing their job. But and then they would run their own compartments, right?
And they didn't have badges that said she, her, they, them, bebop, boop. You know, it's like.
Well, also,
the story. We stuck the story. I watched yesterday The City on the Edge of Forever. Remember OG's episode? I know you're going to remember City on the Edge of Forever with Joan Collins.
One of the greatest Star Trek episodes ever.
It is. Where is that now in any sci-fi show, except for Altered Carbon season 1? Season one, yeah, because Adam, it's like we talked about.
I watched season 2. There was elements. I just loved the world of Altered Carbon, so I didn't. I slogged through season 2, but man, it was not season 1.
You're courageous because it's like they had a budget for season 1, and then season 2 was like, hey, anybody got a GoPro? GoPro. Okay.
Get some GoPros.
I mean, it was just horrific.
Wasn't that guy an Avenger?
Yeah. Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Whatever Falcon. Yeah. BLM Pro. Just put him in there. It was horrific. But I keep looking for old. I don't know how long. It's like I watch old Trek over and over. Watch Next Generations. The Drumhead. Again, it answers so many of the questions that not Star Trek, but Tinseltown wants to. Like we want to be responsible. Well, really? Have you seen these shows? There's a history. They've already done this. You could do it if you get some good writers.
Well, but there's also, I think that there's this thought that our society is somehow that if you go back into the past, that we're anachronistic. That the society itself, like we've progressed. And what I've thought is really interesting is we are, especially in America, our society was evolving on a natural course. I mean, in terms of being more open and being more accepting of all different kinds of people. I mean, remember, same-sex marriage was law of the land, and it was moving progressively on a natural evolutionary course until about 2012, when things started to really strange.
Obama. I'm sorry. Sorry. Something caught in my throat.
And
I'm good.
And the whole thing about like DEI initiatives and critical race theory and all that stuff was being injected. Some people say it's BlackRock, and a lot of those part of it. That was definitely, that actually did happen. You can actually go look at. And the problem with all that is it disrupted a normal evolutionary cycle, and it doesn't work. Injecting all this stuff doesn't work because you can't tell. And I was saying this on Echo Base Network stream. What you've done is you've taken a story, the structure of a story, and how a story works is based on archetypes, some that go back thousands of years. The development of certain tales, and by trying to circumvent those archetypes by injecting, say, identity politics into a story, you have bastardized the form, the actual storytelling form itself, and it doesn't work. And so what's really interesting is Star Trek itself has a storytelling paradigm. And what's interesting is, like, if you're a spacefaring civilization that is interacting with aliens throughout the universe, and you've portrayed, say, intermarriages between a Vulcan and, say, a human woman, Spock's parents, that means the society is accepting of interspecies relationships.
Oh, for a long time.
Yeah, and in Aliens, it doesn't matter if it's Octurian, baby. You know, that conversation they have at dinner. So this is something that was built into the very fabric of the milieu or the mythology of Trek. So when you have a quote-unquote non-binary character from the 31st century telling a gay character to use their proper pronouns 1,000 years from now, you've shown that you have not been paying any attention to the very show that you're working on, because those concerns were surmounted 1,000 years previous. And when you're so blatantly trying to insert, what you're doing is you're insulting your audience, first of all. True. By because your audience is already way ahead of you, and this kind of acceptance was already de rigueur in the 23rd century. Right. And to watch writers, it tells me that the writing staff does not even understand the show that I mean, they were already dealing with these issues when they introduced symbiotes and the Trill back in when they first did The Host, when they introduced the Trill in Next Generation. And you had the gender swap of the character that Beverly fell in love with. He got killed, and his symbiote was put into the body of a woman, and she has to come to grips with the fact. They already did this on Next Generation. They did it in a very
long time ago. But you just made the point that I was making. That's why I say it's what's going on in Hollywood is, I think, woke is used for a camouflage for talentless hacks. In one aspect. Two, everything that they pretend to want to represent, quote unquote, has existed, has been done a long time ago. Well, yeah. So they have other motives.
But that feeds back into the history point that's been made before, and that none of these people are aware, really, that these issues have been dealt with in decades ago in many cases. These people aren't familiar with the source material, but also the mindset is completely different. So, I'm lucky enough to work with some very great creative people, and one of the most important maxims that we operate by is that whenever you're verging on anything that seems like it might be social commentary, drop the immediate thing you're looking at, because that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is, what is the underlying thing that you're talking about? What is it that's, say, cancel culture, for example? You can look at Twitter for cancel culture, and everyone gets really sad and upset that Twitter is just everyone trying to cancel everybody else and report them and all the rest of that. Rather than looking at that, you can go back and you can say, well, what's the underlying principle, the underlying dynamic there? What really separates modern day cancel culture from killing Socrates for corrupting the youthful mind, for example? These things are actually timeless, and they are universal to human condition. They pop up again and again and again throughout history. And if you're really interested in telling a timeless story, you need to understand what makes these things timeless. If all you're doing, as Star Trek Discovery does in the case of the non-binary character, is using pronouns, because pronouns are the issue of the last 5 minutes, then 5 minutes hence, your show is going to date terribly. Correct. In 10 years' time, no one's going to remember. I don't even remember the name of the character who was the non-binary character in Star Trek Discovery. No one will look back on that in the way that they do look back still on the original trilogy and say, this is a timeless show because it has timeless lessons and it's not obsessed with its own present day.
These people aren't
beautifully stated.
It is beautifully
agreed. Well, they're not trying to write timeless stories. No. They're trying to write their moral superiority over everyone else. That's what they're doing. They're virtue signaling to themselves. They're writing for their own little bubble. They don't care about the audience. They don't care about anyone other than their own little bubbles. That's it. That's why they're injecting all this stuff in here. As many people have stated, they don't know the source material. They don't care about the audience. All they're doing is taking the power that's been given to them and basically building an echo chamber and watching what they want to see in these stories, which is not what anyone else wants to see. No one wants to see that shit.
Well,
no, I mean, we have basically a groups of, we're talking about the people who are creating this stuff are bumper sticker slogans that breathe and go to the bathroom, that there is no depth to them. But let's see real quick if we have some super chats. Let's see if there are any questions that are directed at anybody that which can pertain to this. 6079 Smith West became a YouTube member. That's great. We're going to have our membership live stream is going to be coming up in the next 10 days. WG gifted 5 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. WG, thank you, my man. You've been here supporting us from the beginning. Sandy Q became a YouTube member. Way to go, Sandy. And it's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Simon Cuff became a YouTube member. Thank you, Simon. That's awesome. We have Mexican Iron Man. What are you doing, producer? Gifted 5 George the Giant Slayer membership. That's the way to go. So go pick those up. And if you've already been gifted a Georgia Giant Slayer membership, because this is our 5th, hey, I can't believe it, 5th live stream, make sure that you either pick it up or that you sign up and become a member. Because again, the membership live stream is coming up in the next 10 days. Curtis D. Montana for $10. Hello. I want to know what you all think about Rod Serling. To me, he's one of the greatest sci-fi writers. The Twilight Zone was perfect, and he wrote the original Planet of the Apes. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I have to say that the Twilight Zone is one of the things that made me want to do what I do. I mean, I watched it in tandem with Star Trek when I was a kid, and I first saw the first Twilight Zone episode I ever saw. I was 5 years old, and it was an episode called "To Serve Man," and it was basically this alien race comes down to Earth, lands at the United Nations, and they were called the Canamites, and they were 9 feet tall, and they come in and they say, listen, we just want to help you, and we just want to make your lives better. And they leave a book behind, and then they start to transform human culture, and they start to make everything good, and they cure our diseases, and they give us limitless power, and they start taking human beings to their home planet on tours.
So it inspired you.
And at the same time, this book that they've left behind is being decoded by Lloyd Bachner and his team. As they're watching the world being transformed around them, they're looking at this book, and the book ends up being called "To Serve Man." Oh. And they are decoding it, and then finally our main character, Lloyd Bachner, is waiting in line to go on one of these spaceships. And his beautiful blonde assistant comes running after him and says, his name's Mr. Chambers. Mr. Chambers, we've deciphered the rest of the book. It's a cookbook. And then it cuts to the inside of the spaceship, and the alien's like, we wouldn't want you to lose weight, Mr. Chambers. And you realize that this altruistic alien race has really just come here to eat us. And when I was 5 years old, it was the scariest notion. It was not like a jump scare, but it terrified me.
The one that hit you right in the spine, where you're like looking.
And it made me. I'm like, this is the greatest TV show ever. And so I watched Twilight Zone religiously. Mark Zakri's book about the making of Twilight Zone that's how I learned all the 157 episode titles. And the thing about the Twilight Zone that people forget is 4 of the 5 seasons were half-hour episodes. And if you want to be a writer, the best Twilight Zone episodes are a masterclass in writing, because you learn how to set up characters and a premise within minutes, and then you tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end in a half an hour. And the very best of the Twilight Zone was written by some of the greatest fantasists of the day: Richard Matheson, Charles Beaumont, George Clayton Johnson. All of these guys were novelists and screenwriters, and they wrote some of the best fantasy in various forms of the era. And it doesn't get enough credit now. I mean, it's weird to me because every kid I went to school with, we all had our favorite Twilight Zone episodes. But now, because it's black and white. But it is truly. I would, if you want to delve in, just look up what are your best Twilight Zone episodes.
We're gonna have to do that. We're gonna set that up. We'll do a Twilight Zone stream.
I mean, there used to be marathons like every.
No, there used to be. Rod Serling, I loved it. Well, I hope that answers your question, Curtis D. Montana. Appreciate it. Sandy Q gifted 10 George the Giant Man memberships. Wow. George the Giant Slayer membership.
Huge.
Thank you, Sandy. Beautiful. Jim Alaska. Hey, Jim.
Wow.
How you doing? You gifted 10 George the Giant Slayer memberships. Go pick them up. We're building Slayer Nation week by week. We're getting there. because we're going right now towards 1,000 memberships. We're about 500 away, but every day getting closer. Next, we have Joe C818, Pure Blood, for $5. The movie Demolition Man is a good representation of Huxley and Orwell world. Cheers.
Prophetic, that movie.
Pure Blood, all the way. I love Demolition Man. I mean, how many things that
great movie
around us happen every day. Red French Moon for €5. The Anime Stein Gate, absolute great sci-fi. The best time travel iteration in animation or live action. Yep, better than the one you might think of. I have to watch that.
I
haven't seen that. I'm going to watch it. Thank you. It's going on the list. Curtis D. Montana for $5. What do you think of Ronald D. Moore, Battlestar Galactica? It is my favorite sci-fi show in the past 20 years. I love both Battlestar Galacticas, but Moore, I loved Edward James Olmos. His mannerisms, the characters, the way they were fighting to survive. I mean, I think that microcosm that it created was addictive. Yep. I mean, it was like addictive before, you had this whole binge addiction. I sometimes think that's good and that's bad because you'll have streaming studios are pumping for quantity instead of quality. But Battlestar Galactica, and
I just watched the first 2 seasons over the past month of the newer Battlestar. Again, I've seen them all before, but man, they hold up.
Yeah, they
hold up.
First 2 seasons definitely do. The third season, I think, strays slightly close to breaking that maxim I just laid out about being a little bit too present day. I mean, it was very, very obvious allegory for War on Terror. And it dragged on a little bit. And then season 4, I think season 4 was completely buggered by the writer's strike, wasn't it? And then they had to really rush the end, which is a shame because the first 2 seasons are very, very good.
I thought
also season 4 is too long. It has 20 episodes. But a lot of people, I have to say, a lot of people don't like the end of Galactica. But I like the fact, and I'm not a religious man, but I like the fact that God
plays a role,
or the intelligence, the monotheist intelligence, is a main character in that show. You just don't see him. You have his 2 agents talking about, and obviously the thing about Cara Thrace gets a little weird with her
she's dead, not
Viper
dead.
from
She's an
heaven
angel,
thing.
not angel.
But I really like it. I really like it because it's got a 2001 quality to it in that the aliens are sort of unknowable, and if you want to look at it that way, obviously she was gifted a Viper, and when she disappears in Daybreak, she's talking to Apollo and they're on Earth and she just says, and she's just gone.
I know that was,
I love that.
I will say you hit something that I hadn't thought of, but I do really appreciate the fact that it's like the way Falling Skies had faith aspects to it. And I bring it up because a lot of people, I find that they don't know it, but Battlestar Galactica did have that faith element.
Well, the Cylons are monotheists and the Colonials are polytheists.
Correct. And we get to see too, it's almost like looking at Zoroastrians versus kind of like a pagan, ancient, I look at them as like ancient Greek, and
it doesn't judge either one.
No, it doesn't. But I like the fact that there is a higher element of faith to it. I mean, Amazon just released that crap trailer for that anime series, Has Been Hotel. They won't even, it's the one about devil's daughter.
Oh yeah,
some crap like that where they're like, when they were describing heaven, they're like, it's not ruled by God. It's like some elder beings. I'm like, whatever. Get this shit off here.
Mongoose. About Battlestar Galactica, real quick.
Yeah.
We are now almost as far away in time from the Battlestar Galactica remake as the Battlestar Galactica remake was from the original Battlestar Galactica.
That's crazy.
Wow. Wild.
That is wild.
And they're trying to do another one.
Wait a minute.
Really?
Yeah. They've been trying for years.
An extension or a reboot?
No, they're going to reboot it.
A reboot of a reboot.
Yeah. A reboot 2.0.
They're going to reboot the reboot. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my.
What did y'all think? I liked Lauren Green.
Cool.
I liked Lauren Green in the beginning. I like the original with Lauren Green, but I loved.
I haven't seen the original, and I really want to because I feel like I'd like it a lot.
I do. Trisha Helfer stole my heart. I have to say, from the first second, Trisha Helfer, I was like, okay, she was perfect. Psychotic Mongoose gifted 1 George the Giant Slayer membership. Thank you, Psychotic Mongoose. Really appreciate it. Jeremiah Hembry for $5. R.I.P. Carl Weathers. You know what? Apollo Creed has gone to the great ring in the sky, but I want to I had marked this as a note. I wanted to bring it up if we ever got around to it. But to show the difference in the way, I think it's not only the talent behind the scenes that has changed in Hollywood. I mean, whether you're talking about the writers or the producers, it's also the stars. We don't have movie stars anymore, but we don't have class acts. We have these celebrities. So this actress the other day, her name is this Bollywood actress and model, Poonam Pandey. You heard that, right? She faked her own death, and it's a publicity stunt. Her excuse was, well, I'm doing it for a good cause. But they're like, it's your own death. I mean, they put out an obituary and did the whole thing. Now,
yeah, great. Everyone knows the cause, but we also hate you now.
Correct.
Right.
But then,
yeah, good job.
But then at the same time, what do you have? You have a class act, a role model who'd been ostracized from Hollywood, who'd been fired. You get Gina Carano, and look at her, and look at what she wrote about Carl Weathers. I did not know that they were that close.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, did y'all know that in the chat? She goes on to say, hearing the news of Carl Weathers passing today is shocking. I'm going to struggle with these words. And she goes down. Yeah. She goes, Carl called me directly after I was fired. I mean, he was a mentor to her. They hung out. I mean, we're not just talking about they were work buddies. I mean, this is someone who guided her and was there with her even after she was fired when so many people turned their back on her. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, here you have two actresses on two different sides of the globe. One is pulling a publicity stunt so she can get some more likes and up her coinage, her currency. And the other one, who's been completely removed from Hollywood, is sitting here saying, hey, here's a man that I loved and respected, and he was a mentor of mine. I mean, that's a class act. And I think we miss a lot of that in Hollywood today. Class.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Gina's got all the class.
She does. Greek life for $20. They don't want us to think and dream. Imagination must be destroyed. That's why I love your channel. You're leading us to never bend the knee. You got it. Thank you.
Always forward.
Always forward. Never bend the knee. Never bow down. Gosu for Canadian $10 might be not as popular, but I really like Continuum TV series. I like that too. I watched it for a while. I didn't see the last 3 episodes. It's about the future cop that sends back to the past, modern day, to track some convicts that escaped to that era. I really love the first. I did. I just didn't.
Yeah, when did this come out? This sounds familiar.
6 years ago, I think, was it? Or 7? I don't know. 6? Anybody know in the chat? When did Continuum come out? It was at the same time. When did at the same time that the one about those kids who had superpowers? It was for 1 or 2 seasons. They could teleport back and forth. And
2012 to 2015.
2000. Wow. Felt like 6 years ago. It was much longer. Thank you, Gosu.
Yeah. Okay. It looks familiar. I think I've seen a couple episodes.
It is good. The first season, especially, it hit it on the head. Mickey R for £5. What are your favorite low-budget sci-fi movies? For me, it's Man from Earth. Still a great story. I love Man from Earth. I also like The Day the Earth Stood Still. Forbidden Planet. Come on. Forbidden Planet, anyone?
Those are, I mean, Forbidden Planet. That's a great movie, and it's based on Shakespeare's The Tempest.
Yep.
You know, and that, again, like Star Trek took a lot of cues from stories like that.
I don't know what the budget was, but I would compare it to today. It probably would be a lower.
I would say Forbidden Planet was a very expensive film.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's black and white, but that was a big budget blockbuster at the time.
So what would be a low budget then?
Have you guys seen that movie Primer?
No,
that was $30,000.
Yeah, super low budget and excellent film.
That was one of the first movies I watched. That when I was in Australia working at Superman Returns, and I watched that in my hotel room one Saturday morning, and I had to watch it twice back to back. I was so intrigued by it.
Yeah, such a good movie, and it was like insanely low budget.
And Shane Carruth, who directed that, only made one other movie, and then he did bad things. He never came back to Hollywood. But he made that, and he made a movie called Upstream Color.
Okay. Is it good?
But I like them both. But look, Primer's not for everyone, but it's one of the most interesting time travel movies you'll ever watch.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Super. I had to watch it twice too. I'm like, wait. How's this working? Because like one person goes back 6 hours later.
It was awesome.
Weird and cool.
Wait, it's called Primer?
Yeah, and
Primer.
then once you watch it, there's a rabbit hole on the internet of people that have charted out who's where and what time.
Yeah. There's a huge fan base for it. It's really, really rad movie.
I think just on a couple of really cheap ones. Another one, Albert Payun's Nemesis from 1993, with a bit of slop to it as well. Well, that's a nice cyberpunk movie right there.
Yeah.
Would Equilibrium fall into that then? Because I never thought of that as sci-fi.
Is that low budget?
Equilibrium?
That was relatively, but you know, Christian Bale's great in that movie.
I guess comparatively.
I just never thought of that as sci-fi, but someone mentioned it. I remember.
I think it's sci-fi.
No, it is.
No, it's definitely sci-fi. It's dystopian.
Yeah. Dystopian future. Yeah.
Yeah. That moment where he's taking the lie detector test so they can see if he has emotion, and all of a sudden it flatlines. Is so awesome. Jesus. He's like, it's heartbeats beating. All of a sudden he's like, you know what? Fuck emotions.
Enemy Mine. I loved Enemy Mine, but that's not low budget. That was with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr. Great movie.
The original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think, was done on a budget of about $400,000.
Oh, with Donald Sutherland?
Yeah, but no, the original was the 1950s.
Oh.
I don't know what the Sutherland. I think the remake budget was quite small as well. But I'm assuming something similar is true of The Thing as well. I think the 80s version had the budget of like 1.5 million or something. So again, not like 4 million, I think it was. So it's not like big budget, but in terms of very impactful. Some of my two favorite films, the originals and the remakes for both of those films.
By the way, that '78 Philip Kaufman Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a banger. That movie, that movie is incredible because it's about an alien invasion that has already succeeded, but the main characters don't know it yet.
Yeah,
it's so beautifully done. The sound design in that film,
cool.
Oh, it's so good.
Distilled Cold War paranoia in a way that's not actually about the Cold War. The Thing, and particularly Invasion of the Body Snatchers, this idea that your enemy could be your neighbor and you have no idea. And the paranoia that builds up and the tension, they're both brilliant films.
Good.
It was. Steel Leg of History for $5. Thanks for stopping by the birthday stream. This is my new icon for my channel. That my friend Tomby. I can't thank you all for your kindness. Be blessed. 263 subs. 263 subs going to 1,000. If you don't know Steel Leg of History, he's a friend of ours. Go check out his channel. He has some good content. He plays a lot of video games. You're going to enjoy it. It's good, relaxing time. Thank you, my friend. Steel Leg of History again. Mexican Iron Man. Hey, can you let George the Giant Slayer, one of my friends, what? To let me know his friend called him to say that his wife passed away yesterday. Oh, we're very sorry. Our condolences.
Yep.
Thank you for letting us know, Steel Leg. John Doe for $5. Did anyone watch The 100 on CW? I didn't get past the third episode. I never wanted the human race to go extinct so badly.
Yeah. I had the same feeling. The longer I watched it, the more I was like, you know what?
Kill them.
They don't deserve to be here. They don't deserve to survive through this. They're all really stupid. And the longer I watched it, I couldn't stop watching. But I really wanted that. You never watch something where you want the main characters to lose, but I really wanted them to lose the whole time.
I did. I watched 4 episodes. I don't know why. I think it was with my girlfriend at the time. She's like, let's watch this. Look, it's a female here. I'm like, if she's good, I don't care. But then I was like, inside of me is like, how long are we going to be dating? It was just one, you have to have, a little test. And then that's when I first heard the Bechdel test. She was like, look, I passed the Bechdel test. I'm like, bye-bye. She's like, what? You're not watching the show? No. Bye-bye. Anyway.
I ended up watching the whole thing. They really tried to go like the Lost route where they were like adding more and more layers to it. I'm like, but you don't need more layers. The human race went to space to survive some apocalypse. Now they're on the planet and they're trying to survive. That is the premise you need. You don't need to add any more to it. You mean that's a cool concept. Let's just go there. Give me 3 seasons of that and call it a day. You don't need to add more and more to it. It got really ridiculous.
You're gonna have to tell me later what they added because I thought that was it.
That wasn't it. No. There was bunkers and other people and it was crazy, dude.
Carno for $10. Hail George in the panel. I just wanted to tell Adam I sent a sci-fi novel to your P.O. box. Project Hail Mary was in fact recommended highly by great Robert Meyer Burnett. Can't wait for you to get it.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you, Carno.
That book was I read that book in basically one sitting. And
really?
It was so much fun. It was written by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, that the movie was based on.
Yeah.
And it is a wildly entertaining confection. and it's also a great first contact story. It's just a great.
Cool.
I hope they make it into a movie. They're talking about it, and Ryan Gosling's supposed to play the lead role. But if they could pull off a movie, it would be an immediate classic.
I heard that Noah Hawley is supposed to be taking up a Star Trek movie.
He was going to, but that got canceled.
With Kate Blanchett and Rami Malek. I was like, Kate Blanchett? I support whatever Kate Blanchett does.
He's done the Alien TV series.
So no more Star Trek.
Is that the Alien where they're gonna retcon that Prometheus bullshit and redo it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, and then, but it's not to be confused with Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus that comes out in a few months.
Okay.
So
Hopefully, they will be aware of each other and not contradict too much. Do you think that they have the foresight for that?
I doubt it.
I doubt.
I mean, I hope. I will tell you this: Steve Asbell, who's the president of 20th Century Studios, is by far the smartest studio executives. He's a huge fan. He really, really, really knows his shit. And unfortunately, he's completely hamstrung over at Disney. But without him, we wouldn't have had the Prey movie, the Predator Prey movie. And he's really trying to break free and make sure that these things are done well. And Fede Alvarez he doesn't have anything to do with Noah Hawley's show, but he's all about. It was because of him that this new Alien movie got made.
Do you know him?
Yes.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just slip him the Dark Horse omnibus editions of the Alien and Alien versus Predator and Predator comics? Just tell him, do this. There's your blueprint.
Yeah, he probably has. I mean, he's the kind of guy that would have them. And by the way, he knows too.
Okay,
he
good.
came up. He worked at Fox for 25 years, and he worked his way up the ranks. He was a creative executive there, and so he's seen it all. And he's incredibly smart. Incredibly smart.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in, we got another one. Curtis D. Montana for $2. Director's cut, Aliens, greatest movie of all time. Greatest sci-fi movie of all time? Is that what you're saying, Curtis? Or greatest movie for you, period?
It's a fantastic movie.
It is.
The greatest 4K remaster of all time, is all I'm saying.
I love the director's cut, though. I
love the director's cut, but not the greatest 4K remaster.
Yeah. I can't. I have to watch the disc before I make my final judgment. But yeah.
What do you think about this news that's come out about Skydance, Lasseter? They're looking at taking Paramount and Star Trek. Do you think that's going to be a good deal for them? You think that would change and we'd get Star Trek back like Terry Metalis?
Skydance is already involved with JJ Trek. They were part of it.
Yeah, they financed it
in 2009. So yeah, I would not keep my hopes up there. Also, did you think that Terminator Sega Genesis was a fantastic movie?
No.
You mean Genesis?
Yeah.
That was horrible.
That was Skydance. And you remember how after that, then James Cameron got his rights back to Terminator again. You know what he did? He licensed them straight back to Skydance, who proceeded to make Terminator Woke Fate.
Oh dear.
I thought Skydance was supposed to be the return of John Lasseter. Like we were going to get Lasseter's vision again, and he was going to be guiding the company.
They can do that in animation. He's not going to have anything to do with Star Trek.
Yeah.
No, but I thought when they brought Lasseter on that was showing kind of like their commitment to storytelling again, not crap.
No, that was showing their commitment to talent. I want me some of that talent.
Gotcha. That's a letdown because when I was reading these, I was going through and I'm like Skydance, which is why I brought it up because they have some amazing people here and y'all have insight into it. But I thought Skydance would do it well. But now that you mentioned it, I couldn't believe.
I want to hear what Robert has to say because I'm sure that you have some more inside track there. I will just say that I honestly hope that Paramount does not go to Skydance because Skydance is a hit and miss in terms of Star Trek. I do not trust them as far as I can throw them because they are in too deep with J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman. They're a big part of the problem right there. So I don't trust them as far as I can throw them.
Well, the one thing about Skydance is I think David Ellison really loves film. So So Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle, who's worth billions and billions of dollars, has two kids, David Ellison and Megan Ellison, that both went to Hollywood. Megan Ellison started her company Annapurna, and then David Ellison started Skydance. And Annapurna is very indie, and they've done a lot of really great movies with great directors, but they haven't made a whole lot of money. Whereas Skydance basically became Paramount's de facto financier and was financing everything from the Mission Impossible movies to the Star Trek movies, and they were bringing in a lot of cash. Now, the one thing about the J.J. Abrams movies, contrary to popular belief, is they didn't make any money. You know, people think that, because the grosses were... Right. Star Trek 09 cost $175 million and did not make $500 million.
No.
So
didn't it have around 300? 330?
Well, yeah, and the studio only gets half of that. And Star Trek Beyond, actually, I think, Andre, didn't you guys do an analysis of Star Trek Beyond?
We did. Yeah, it was one of the greatest flops of all time.
Yeah, it's great...
That movie flopped so bad that one single-handedly caused China to reassess its funding Hollywood operation, because they were very willing to take a loss to increase their level of soft power, but there are limits. And even the CCP went to the various financiers and they were like, what the hell are you guys doing? We can't keep bleeding money like this. And they did changes after that. And of course, Paramount was one of the biggest offenders, because around 2015, 2016, when Star Trek Beyond came out, they were a bomb factory. I mean, one of the executives, he seriously let his 4-year-old child dictate that Monster Truck or whatever movie. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
My God! Monster Truck movie.
Look it up. And with Star Trek Beyond, they basically kind of like, because they were developing that movie for years. So to be clear here, when we say that it lost loads of money, it lost Paramount loads of money. It made a shit ton of money for Bad Robot and stuff at Paramount expense. But basically, they had spent years developing the movie with racking up costs and everything like that. And then they decided, nope, what we're doing is too Star Trek-y. So then they scrapped everything, started over, and then they redid the whole movie in 9 months flat with the Fast and Furious director. And of course, that ain't cheap. When you're going to get a movie finished from 9 months from starting writing it to release, that's going to be expensive. And that movie was expensive. It cost like close to 200 million. In reality, it cost closer to 400 million all in. And Paramount probably lost more than 200 million on it.
Well, one of the things that I think that the mistaken thinking, especially when it comes to Star Trek as a franchise, they think this is the wrong think of Hollywood. They just think every franchise is essentially the same. And because they both take place in space, the thought was, well, we can make Star Trek like Star Wars. And when they brought J.J. Abrams on and Bad Robot to reboot it, it's a perfect example of completely overspending on a franchise, thinking you're going to get a return and not really thinking about the franchise itself. Star Trek, you can make great Star Trek with 2 people in a room if you have a great script.
You could, but what you just said, funny enough, Little Platoon, Andre, Brian, we were talking about that. I was like, one of the problems with Star Trek is that they tried to become Star Wars. And
it
doesn't work. But it doesn't work, though, in a way. Star Trek is a different vehicle. Star Wars is a hero's journey. It's a specific... It is a space.
Well, it's a swashbuckling, fantasy. And it takes a lot from samurai movies and all that. Whereas Star Trek is a thoughtful. Look, they should have capped the investment. There's no reason a Star Trek movie anybody should spend $175 million on a Star Trek movie. Star Trek is $100 million franchise at best. And the thing is, if you can't make a great Star Trek movie for $100 million, you have no business making movies at all.
But we just proved it, didn't we? Didn't Terry Matalas just prove that Picard season 3, it came under budget? Brian and I were talking about this.
Yeah, it was under budget.
It came under budget, and he pulled it off. I loved Picard season 3. I don't know about anybody else here.
Well, no, I mean, but that's the thing, because it was, if you look at Picard season 3, why were they able to make it? It's basically a bottle TV series.
Yeah, it does,
which is mostly shot on its standing sets, and they had, so you have the Titan, aka Enterprise G sets. You had the Metalis Prime sets that they built, this exterior set. So it's a very stage-bound production, just like the Star Trek movies were. You know,
Right.
other than you went to San Francisco in Star Trek 4, and you had an exterior in Star Trek Insurrection. But basically that was one set, and they kept the money, they kept the price down, because Star Trek is not, and yet they wanted to turn it into some kind of a franchise, that thinking that you could just do that and have people go. I mean, that's not how it works.
Didn't Undiscovered Country made money though?
But it wasn't an expensive movie. It was, as a matter of fact, they brought the budget down from Star Trek 5, because Star Trek 5 went over budget, and they didn't even have enough money to finish the film.
Right.
So
I hope Legacy. We're going to be getting Legacy next, because I want Legacy.
We are not.
Don't tell me that. Lie to me a little bit.
Lie to me, Jerry.
Some sweet nothings, you know. Jesus, you just hammered it. Nope, we're not. Come on, you don't.
It's true.
It's really funny. I just watched. I just watched the last 3, the J.J. Abrams movies, starting from Star Trek, and then I don't remember what the second one's called with Khan, and then Beyond.
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness, you're right. And the first 2, they're not bad movies. They are. You could tell that they're too much for a Star Trek movie, but I enjoyed them, and she enjoyed them. And at the end of Beyond, I didn't even remember watching Beyond. No. And I had seen it already, but I don't remember it at all when I was watching it again with her. And we finished the movie, and she looked at me and she goes, how the hell did that come after the other 2 movies? Because like they weren't bad movies, but whatever. But then Beyond was just so bad on another level onto itself. And she was just like, I can't believe it was that bad of a movie, just in general of the movie itself. And then comparatively to what they were doing before with, the reboot and then Beyond, or Into Darkness, I meant.
Well, it's like everything else. I mean, everything's done in a blender. Can't remember one film, one show after the other, whether it's in sci-fi or regular.
Yeah. And also remember that Beyond was written in literally no time flat, because the original Star Trek 3 was too tricky. And so they just decided that's Fast and Furious.
Stupid.
And they threw that.
God forbid they make a Star Trek movie that's Star Trekky.
Yeah, but that was the reason. That's why it was canceled.
And Bob Orsi was basically drummed out of the business. He was directing and writing that movie, and he's gone.
Is Kurtzman ever going to be leaving? Because I really want Kurtzman.
The thing is, though, there's no incentive if you're making cash.
Right.
They've got deals. They're making cash, and I've tried to explain. I was explaining this on another podcast the other day, that the corporately held studios do not know whether something is good or bad when it comes to a franchise. They couldn't tell you what Star Trek is good and what Star Trek is bad, or what Star Wars is good or what Star Wars is bad. They have a spreadsheet, and they look at J.J. Abrams, and they're like, okay, here, this guy has done these things. He's done this in TV. He's done this on the movie side. So he is acceptable from our metrics. But there's nobody at a corporate level that understands the difference between good and bad Star Trek. They just think of it as a product that we sell. Like no one stops and goes, there's good Coke and there's bad Coke. There was new Coke, that didn't work. But Coca-Cola is a product, and we can sell it. If we want to capture the market, we can capture the market this way. But
they wanted to try to capture Pepsi. Wasn't that the case with the new Coke? It's the same way that Star Trek is trying to approach. Again,
but that's their thought. Their thought is that Star Trek is a franchise and Star Wars are the same.
But they're not. They need to hire some people who know what they're doing. If they want to make money, why don't they just say, hey, we want to make money. What works? Let's get those people who know how it works.
I agree with you, but at the corporate level, how do you do that?
They don't know.
A corporation doesn't know. And what they do is they look at, and people in Hollywood, all they know is that what people have done in the past. And from a corporate standpoint, J.J. Abrams made a Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise. He did 2 Star Trek movies. He made Super 8. And he made The Force Awakens, which made $2 billion.
Right.
So from a but the thing is, you have to understand that at the corporate boardroom level, there's no way to delineate.
Well, wait, one second. Rob, no, I get what you're saying, but right there, I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but I want to ask this because it ties in. So you're saying you're there at in the corporate boardroom, right? And they're going, his Force Awakens movie made $2 billion. There's no one there who thinks this happened because it had been 20 years and you have a Star Wars fan base which is waiting fervently. So therefore that's built in the same way Barbie. Because I get this question all the time. You attack woke films. How the hell did Barbie make $1 billion then? I'm like, well, it has a 75-year franchise base. You have people who are going to watch it, girls who've been seeing this their whole life. That's a difference between Star Trek.
Right.
But the thing is, whether you like Barbie's politics or not, it's a good movie.
Right.
It delivered a wildly entertaining experience to the audience. Movies that don't do that don't make $1.4 billion.
Correct.
You have to have a movie that people like enough. Plus, the combination of the whole Barbenheimer thing, it created a social meme. It became a thing people had to go be a part of to be a part of culture. So that was part of it as well. But both Barbie and Oppenheimer delivered, especially as a juxtaposition of each other, delivered the goods. I mean, while I thought Barbie was, the fact that they were able to make that movie from a toy is astonishing to me.
But you don't corporate board knows, they wouldn't know that these are the X, Y, and Z reasons why Force Awakens succeeded.
No, because here's the thing: there's nothing in their way of thinking that doesn't enter into. Disney paid $4 billion for Star Wars, so they know that Star Wars is one of the most valuable entertainment concerns ever. Star Wars, before Disney bought it, had generated $22 billion in merchandise sales. So for them, Star Wars is already a commodity that is incredibly valuable. That's why they paid $4 billion for it. But in their thinking, there's no one that goes, what's the difference between good Star Wars and bad Star Wars? Like, no one in the corporate boardrooms going, Jar Jar Binks sucked. They're not doing that. All they know is what Star Wars has generated from a product standpoint. And that's the real problem with so often. And then here, remember this. Nobody in Hollywood ever wants to be responsible for being wrong.
Right, of course.
Then you have these people that are constantly in fear for their jobs. Because if you make one big bad mistake, you're done.
I want to hear what Little Platoon has to say on that, on the subject that you're talking about.
I think I agree with pretty much all of it, except that I don't think Barbie was a particularly good film. I think that sort of works against it. You're right that there are certain franchises which can't not make money, or seemingly that seems to be the case when you set about trying to make the thing. Barbie is one of them. Super Mario Brothers is another, I think, pretty good example. It's a substantially empty film. It's about as safe as you could possibly play it, but you're not going to lose money on that precisely because it's had all of this immense work put into the creation, which has garnered a fan base and all the rest of that. And as you say, from a corporate perspective, if you're simply looking at balance sheets, the odds of a pretty good return on something like that are impressive. I do think eventually, well, money inevitably does speak to everyone. The fact that The Rise of Skywalker earns, what did that earn? Was it 700 million or something? It was like a stark decline from.
It was around, I thought it was 820 or something, but it was nothing near Force Awakens.
It barely crossed the billion, but it was beaten by Joker.
It was beaten by Joker, and for a good reason, which is that the Joker is a much better film. But I think the fact that there hasn't been another J.J. Abrams-led major production since then would suggest that the balance sheet mechanics aren't quite working out in his favor at the moment. There is a risk for this, but that all comes back to what you were saying about corporations not understanding what makes a good franchise. In the same way that Mario could not lose money and Barbie could not lose money, a Mario 3 or a Barbie 3, which only do what the current Barbie and the current Mario film does, will not earn anything like that amount of money because they are empty, because they are not actually works of art. They don't really tell stories. As films, they leave quite a lot to be desired. Really, it's just about cashing in on the latest franchise. It's why you're seeing so many video game movies that are coming out and video game series coming out this year because they've built up established audiences. The studio has no idea how to build the audience, but it does know how to capitalize on the audience somebody else has made. It just means that inevitably all of these franchises will go the way of Star Wars until someone in charge decides that maybe creating a fan base is more important than capitalizing.
Also, I mean, you know, a video game, the video game franchises were not working. I mean, look at the first Super Mario Brothers movie. That was a total misfire. Even like Assassin's Creed, which should have been a no-brainer, that what they tried to do with that film was ridiculous. And it doesn't work, you know, and it was
I like that movie. I don't know.
Well, it didn't make money.
It's true. I get that. It wasn't for everyone. I thought it was cool though. But I hate the Assassin's Creed games. It's funny how that works.
Well, you
anyway,
like the movie, but not the games. But you're a gamer.
Yeah.
Wow.
True.
Okay.
But I think like the Super Mario Brothers, it's a great. I mean, I know it's 30. They're 30 years apart. But if you look at the original compared to,
I also like the original Mario Brothers too.
Well, it's a weird. It's a weird.
You talking about the one with Leguizamo?
Yeah,
that movie was awesome.
That was a cyberpunk movie. It's one of the best cyberpunk.
That movie was
ever
awesome. I gotta watch that again. That shit was awesome.
They released it on 4K disc. You can get a brand new
hell yeah.
special edition
I gotta
from
get that.
Umbrella Entertainment.
On that point, I do think that there might be some pretty nasty shocks coming down the line, though, because it's one thing to say, okay, the game has a long-established fan base, but that you're talking about two very different things. Something like Fallout has been played by a fraction of a percentage of the people that have played and are familiar with Mario. Mario is almost unique as a cultural property. Pokemon, similar. Barbie, similar. There are not very many things like that with such a huge audience backed up, multi-generational, which is also key. The Mario film is so successful because parents who played the games can take their kids to see it. It's safe entertainment, and the kids have also played the games. You don't have that. Even with the next most popular gaming franchise, you've probably got maybe half the viewership potential as the Mario film does. So I don't see that the huge splurge on video game productions doing particularly well. Halo is a really good example. Halo is very popular, but it didn't have the big impetus.
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
games are popular.
The game
popular.
is popular. Right. Yeah,
now,
I agree with
the
that.
two things that work against that are Halo is not popular on the same scale as Mario, and also the Halo series is abysmal. So it alienated even the people who did go to see it. Oh, who did watch it on television. Sorry.
Well, I mean, you saw him. He took off his helmet. One of the key things in the game that you don't do. I mean, Fallout. We have that next coming from Amazon. You watch the trailer. Did anybody see the trailer already?
Yeah.
I mean,
I saw it.
And they've changed. And I like Christopher Nolan's brother. For one season, he always does a bang-up job. Westworld season 1, I thought it was fantastic.
Westworld 1 was great.
It was, and then all of a sudden we went back into decaf Blade Runner territory. It just
that's what it still has to be good. It has to work. It doesn't matter where it was derived from. Right. In the medium of, say, streaming series or movies, they still have to work as a streaming series and as a movie. And I think like The Last of Us, you know, on HBO, whatever you thought of the game or whatever, it had a big
never played it.
It had a big following because it had a cinematic story, but the show worked and it became a huge hit for HBO and is now nominated for awards and all of that because it was good, you know, and you had Craig Mazin coming off of Chernobyl, which was an incredible miniseries.
Right, but I heard it twisted, Robert. I heard it twisted. I mean, when I was talking to Az about it, like it twisted the entire game inside. It made the mistakes that they.
But here's the thing: you have to remember, you have to put aside the game, okay, because you're translating it to another medium. It's like people that complain that Tom Bombadil's not in Lord of the Rings. You couldn't have. The thing was the spirit of Tolkien, Professor Tolkien, in the Lord of the Rings movies, and I would say it was.
Jackson captured his spirit to the T. There were some things I didn't like, but like we said on a stream before, I love Peter Jackson's series. I would change certain things with it, but that's because I love Tolkien. But he captured the heart, exactly what Rings of Recycled Fantasy didn't do. There was no heart there. No.
Well, it also had, I think, a fundamental misunderstanding of what the story. Look, the crazy thing to me is that Tolkien's story, you can't take England out of the Middle Earth. You can't take the reason that he saw what industrialization was doing to his beloved English countryside. You can't take those things out of what he was trying to do.
He wanted to create a mythology for England. He was terrified.
Mordor was not built in a day.
No, come on. And then what was that gold rubrics trick? It's like, hey, push the button, hit the wheel, and we're going to see a hamster, and boom, there we go. More.
I think it's what's more interesting about something like Last of Us is that after The Walking Dead, where people are literally, if there's one genre that's pretty played out, the zombie genre has got to be that.
And yet they're
genre.
bringing back Walking Dead again.
But,
they are.
But the thing is, Last of Us was able to. I didn't think, to be honest, it would work. But you had great people that understood how to make a TV miniseries. So there was a lot of great talent there. And yeah, they played around with the game. I mean, I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with The Last of Us 2.
Well, that's the interesting point, isn't it? Because all the people who did complain that season 1 diverted from the game are going to be the people who really hope that season 2 diverts from the game because they hate what the games did with the characters. This is why you can get way, way too deep when people complain about lore breaks. Right. They are important, but only if they break the story you're telling. They are not in and of themselves important because sometimes the lore makes terrible mistakes, as The Last of Us 2 did. I thought The Last of Us Season 1, from what I've played of the game, captured most of the important points of the game, and that sort of involved downplaying, which is the other criticism I've heard a lot, the cordyceps. There aren't that many zombie threats in the show as there are in the game, which is probably a response to what you were talking about the zombie franchise being quite clapped out at this point. They recognized the most interesting part of that game was the human characters in it, not necessarily the zombie threats.
100%, man. You nailed it. And what they did, they even added things to the cordyceps threat in the show where they were connected via the vines and things. So if you jostled somebody a mile away, the cordyceps were alerted. That's something that Druckmann added to the show. And one of the things about Last of Us is you had one of the co-creators of the game itself writing with Craig Mazin, writing episodes. And they didn't shy away from that. They didn't give him some honorary title. He was directing episodes. He was writing episodes. And I think as an adaptation, it's a pretty great adaptation of the source material. Yeah. And I wish we had more because I looked at on the flip side, to pick another game, Uncharted, which is the Uncharted video game that I played. The first Uncharted, it was the first time I actually felt, and this was 15 years ago? The first Uncharted game was the very first time I really felt that a story in a video game and the characters, the actors, the voice actors, I was totally immersed and involved in the story being told. Cool. And I felt that the video game, the adaptation, the movie with Tom Holland, I like Tom Holland, missed the boat entirely.
Well, Andre, what do you think of that? Do you think that the way The Last of Us was does the lore matter, following the lore as much, or following the good storytelling and capturing the spirit about the story?
I would say that at this point it's good storytelling because, as already pointed out, the Lord went to hell in the second game anyway. So at this point they have a great opportunity to go in a different direction and make it its own thing, kind of like The Walking Dead already did with some mixed success here and there. Basically, I think that at this point, as the Little Platoon pointed out, if they're going to stay true to the game in this case, it's going to go to hell because no one liked where it went. You have to go in a different direction now. They already set that up in the first season. Now they just have to continue and make it even better for the second season. The beauty is that the expectations were for the first season. The first game is something that people actually liked. So any kind of change to that is going to be poorly received by the fan base. But the fan base already received the second game poorly, so you really have to screw it up to make that wrong, don't you? They have every opportunity to actually improve on the source material in this one. But it goes to show the problem that you have with these AAA video games that I see many people are often ignoring. Because, Robert, you pointed it out yourself, you were so immersed in Uncharted that the movie was disappointing. Now, why was that? I will tell you why that was, for many reasons. But a big one, sorry, I didn't mean to intercut, but I'll tell you the real fundamental reason. How long did you play the Uncharted game? How many hours of story time is there?
50 hours.
Exactly. How long is a movie?
Yeah.
You
46
are
minutes.
you are talking about condensing something that you have experienced and lived for 50 hours, and that is a speed run of 50 hours to go through the entire thing. And this is supposed to be condensed into a 2-hour movie. Ain't no way you're going to be satisfied because you have immersed yourself in it and it's going to be cut so badly. Now, by contrast, something like Super Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog, what is the story of the game? Certainly the early ones. It's you begin here and you're going to end up there. And you're going to collect some rings or you're going to save a princess along the way. And then you have a really, really simple story, but any screenwriter worth their salt, so few in Hollywood these days, can expand into a proper story. You see, that's like the big difference. That's a big challenge for these modern day AAA games. They have to contract so much.
But another thing that they did with Uncharted is that they wanted a star, and Nathan Drake, the main character, was like in his mid-30s, you know, and his friend Sully was older. And by putting Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland in that film, I felt that they immediately they sort of hamstrung the film, because then they have to turn it into something that isn't the game.
Yeah.
You know, they went for the star power, which I totally understand, but you're now asking me to believe in young Nathan Drake as a basically as a kid.
And they already had Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, they already had that. But Brian,
I mean, the entire fan base all wanted Nathan Fillion. Yes. You know, he even did a fan, a cut of Uncharted, right? Being Nathan, and it's like they had he looked like the guy. He would have fit perfectly. I don't understand why.
But how many times do they listen to the fan base? Yeah, how many fans this week were pissed off when they found out that Suicide Squad game humiliated Batman by getting, you know, how Harley Quinn assassinated him, then having the Flash peed on. I mean, yes, it's a video game, but when you're talking about the way that whether it's DC or it's Warner Brothers, Warner Brother Discovery, and the way that they're treating, every studio is treating legendary characters, both deconstructing them, then demoralizing people by destroying them. I mean, you cannot sustain stories when you attack the fan base and disrespect them. I don't care if you have even the greatest story writers. I don't think you can bring people in when you continually attack what they love.
I agree.
How many times, Brian, did we have people when we were Stargate? It's had chances for reboots, and hopefully it's going to be coming back.
Yeah.
But how many times did it have a shot at that?
Oh, so many times. Yeah. In fact, Joe Flanagan, who played Shepard in Atlantis, when they canned the series, he tried to buy the rights to make more, and he actually had funding. Like, he had a group of investors going, the whole nine, and then all hell broke loose at Sci-Fi, and a bunch of their executives were canned. And they switched over to like that WWE model, and talks broke down, and he wasn't, and MGM took the rights back. And because MGM was in the middle of a bankruptcy, they couldn't even entertain Joe Flanagan. So it went on hold for, you know, a decade, right? And then when Amazon bought it back up, everyone, when we bought the MGM catalog, we assumed that they were going to do something with it, and they're in the process of doing something with it. But aside from the Joe Flanagan bit, after Joe Flanagan, Roland Emmerich, the original movie guy, he tried to get something going. In fact, he actually signed a contract that today is actually making it difficult for the reboot to happen, because he has rights in some way to the movie. And so without Roland Emmerich's approval, you know, on the story, they can't go forward with a theatrical movie. So they have to do a series, and he doesn't want to do. He wants to ignore, you know, the entire TV series and just make a direct sequel to the movie, which at least Amazon has the forethought to understand that that's a horrible idea. So they're not going forward with that. And now we're in this weird holding pattern where they have the guys from The Expanse that sent in a pitch for a new series, and it involved the Destiny, what's it called? The last series that came out, Universe.
But Stargate Universe.
Yeah, Stargate Universe. But then the cast from Stargate Universe, they're not all available. In fact, the main guy, David Blue, I believe his name.
Nobody
is,
liked him.
No one likes him. Yeah.
Could you imagine that? Nobody's wants to reboot a film. They all want to reboot the series, but they don't want to reboot it because of one dude.
One dude. Yeah.
One.
So they're going to have to ignore, in order to reboot it, they're going to have to, relatively, they're going to have to ignore the last series that came out, Universe, let it be out there in the distance, collecting dust while they focus on what happened at the end of Atlantis, because Atlantis is it's their best bet for a continuation. So either they reboot the entire time or use Atlantis to create a continuation that will allow them to introduce a new cast and continue a new series. So between Emmerich and David Blue and the fact that they're ignoring Brad Wright, the original writer, they have a little bit of mess on their hands. And it because the writer's strike, it also made it more difficult because they were in the middle of trying to get it going with the guys from the what's it called, Penguin, whatever, the Penguin in a Parka, the guy from The Expanse, and then that fell apart. Brad Wright did put a script in, but because the script probably, and I'm guessing here, probably had something to do with the continuation of Universe, and they didn't want to deal with David Blue. Here we are.
Did any of y'all watch Stargate? Anyone else? Andre, Little Platoon, Robert, Adam?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I've watched more since then because it was just when it started. It was just I was too busy. I didn't watch. I just wasn't home to watch a lot of stuff. But I was impressed because I've watched the first season of the first Stargate, and it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, you know what it reminded me of? Imagine if an entire series had to do with nothing but Star Trek away missions.
Right? Yeah.
Well, pretty much. Yeah,
pretty much what it was.
You're getting to travel. You're basically, in one way, looking at ancient civilizations by using this alien tech. You go to this planet, it's more Egyptian. This one is more ancient Greek with ancient Greek gods. But it's an interesting way.
I love the take on the Norse mythology. How like the great, like we for the last 70 years. What's the aliens? And when everyone sees a UFO, they assume grays, right? The little gray green men. And they took that entire concept of the Greys and they made them into the Norse mythology, Thor and Zeus. It's Thor and Loki and really cool characters. It was, the way they take our actual conspiracy theories and wrap them into mythology, then make them part of a real story. And then they pop in that Wormhole Extreme show where they're saying that the Air Force is helping make a TV show to distract the public from the Stargate program.
Yeah, that was great.
Great, bro. That's because you're basically saying because at that point fans are like, wait, is that what Stargate is? Is Stargate just distracting the public from what's actually happening? What the hell?
Yeah, that was kind of like that meta. I really enjoyed that.
Super meta.
Is it not real? Is it real? Is it not? But I can't believe it. I'm still stuck. It's in my mind. There's not going to be a legacy. Metalis, I still think, can pull it off.
But the thing is, if they did that, they would have to cede control to him.
Okay, they did it for season 3.
But yeah, the only reason Terry Metalis got to do what he got to do with season 3 is because everybody else was busy.
Yeah, everyone ignored him. Right.
Kurtzman was making his Man Who Fell to Earth sequel, and then you had Michelle Paradise and her team making Star Trek Discovery, and everybody was already, and then Akiva Goldsman's doing Strange New Worlds, so they had to deliver this third season. So Terry came in, and smartly he brought his writing staff from 12 Monkeys, so he had a group of people. He was able to get rid of everybody he wanted to get rid of. He couldn't get rid of Michelle Hurd, which I understand, and I think he turned her character into a better, much better character, and the relationship he wrote for her with Worf was actually a lot of fun in that show.
Yeah.
And
the audience loved it.
Oh,
yeah, that's the thing. And so
the audience loved it. The writing's on the wall. If anyone at Paramount just looks at the numbers for 5 minutes, they'll realize that this is what the audience wants.
Okay,
maybe we should stick with that.
Wait a minute. We just said that a minute ago. But wait, we just said that a few minutes ago. Robert was talking about it, and we were going through Andre and Little Platoon. They're saying the corporate doesn't know how to make these. They don't know what makes one successful. They're looking at the balance sheet. So if they look at the balance sheets of season 3, won't they go, hey, this is a good deal. Let's do it again.
Yeah, under budget, on time, and the majority of fans, new and old, all loved it. I mean, it's a no-brainer. That's why I think that Kurtzman just has this hard on for Starfleet Academy. He thinks he can replicate what they did on the CW for a decade with Star Trek and bring all these new fans in.
No one is going to watch. No one's. You want to go into space. It worked for a couple of episodes in Next Generation, when Picard had to go to the Academy because of Will's problems, and it's not going to work for an entire show, especially when then they're going to have the whole rainbow DEI quota queen thing.
I was about to bring that up. You said it's a no-brainer for these people, but they also have to answer to they operate in debt, so they have to answer to BlackRock. They have to answer to these corporations that are forcing what they want to be injected into these shows, and it's not what the audience wants. It's not season 3. It's season 1 and 2.
One of the arguments that they will use, and it's marketing for any studio, it applies to video games, it applies to films. They have, I think they call it if you're targeting all 4 quadrants.
4 quadrants.
4 quadrants. And so with something like Starfleet Academy or Lower Decks, I think the same mentality is at play. If your perception is that your franchise does really, really well, but only with an audience demographic over 50, what you really want to do is to appeal to the other quadrants as well. You need to get more young people on side. How do you put more young people into your franchise? You have shows about young people. The fact that the shows about young people tend to piss off all the old people who actually watch your stuff is inconvenient for them, and they haven't yet found a way around that. But I think part of the mentality behind pivoting to shows like that, same thing will happen, I think, with the new Alien film, which is following young people probably getting hopefully murdered by aliens. It's an old franchise with an old demographic, and they want to try and rejuvenate it. I don't think they will succeed, but they will try.
Does that make sense to you? We're going to make a film that has an established fan base, but we're not going to cater to that fan base and then try to expand it to include others. We're actually going to piss off the established fan base who's going to spend the money with us for a base that it doesn't exist.
Or best case scenario, ignore the fan base to try to completely focus on another fan base.
But what Platoon said's absolutely correct. The thing that they're missing is that we as young people were watching franchises or watching movies about old people in the first place. I was 12 when I saw Alien for the first time. There's no kid in that movie. I loved Alien. I mean, it was when I saw it, I was blown away by it, because those are people. I mean, I didn't want to be on that ship, but I want to be in space. Those are people that I hope to one day grow up and be. I mean, even though he got killed, I wouldn't mind being Tom Skerritt, in that movie, Captain Dallas.
Right.
And we as kids, this is what I do not understand. We as kids, these franchises became great franchises because we as kids loved watching adults being the people we hoped to one day become.
Yeah.
And what I hated as a kid was whenever kids showed up in my favorite franchises, I was like, I was already a kid. I don't need to see other kids in these shows, because I knew that was fake. That was something that was trying to appeal to me. Now in Aliens, it works because the whole maternal instinct, when you see Ripley facing off against an alien queen, you're literally watching 2 entities whose power is their femininity. That's what gives them their strength, the power to gestate and create life.
Their motherhood,
and Ripley's lost her daughter, and she has her surrogate daughter that gives her that power. So it made sense. It wasn't pandering. But this idea that we have to appeal to young people is the stupidest. It has infected our thinking for the last 35 years.
Well, because it's trying to turn everything into that consume product and get ready to consume more product. It's trying to turn brain brands into boy brands into girl brands.
One of the things I quite liked about Picard season 3 is the fact that the villains that they infest the minds of anyone under the age of 25, so they get the mind virus, and you have to go and deprogram them. I thought that was quite subtle messaging going on there, but I enjoyed that.
You're right about that. It's almost like some of these films and television shows are more kind of like system updates. It's like, did you get your system update for the latest quotas, for the latest thing that's socially relevant? It's just...
Well, if you go even further and look what the economic forces like the BlackRocks, look, what's going on here ultimately is they want to dismantle Western civilization.
Yes.
Facts.
I mean, ultimately, and it's not like I'm not some tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, but look,
they say it.
Yeah, they're open about this.
They totally say it.
Come on, they tell you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy.
And what have they done? What have they done? It's like the Soviet defector on that Canadian interview show from the 85.
Oh, Yuri Bezmenov.
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yes.
He is
Bezmenov says it right. He comes out and says it's going to take a generation. What they've done and it's very easy to spot. What have they done in academia when they're programming a generation to hate their own way of life,
to hate
their parents and their family,
and hate their family and hate their own way of life. And the funny thing is not understanding that everything about the struggle that brought Western civilization. I mean, who got rid of slavery in the West? Old white men.
Oh, white men. Yeah, but see, they don't think about that. That's why they don't teach them.
I mean, first it was the Brits. It was the Brits, and then we did. And even people forget when you had the Barbary pirates. It was we who had to go to the Barbary coast and say, you took 1.5 million white folk hostage. Correct. We can't have this. We've never had a problem with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Why are you doing this? And if you continue, we're going to come over here en masse and take you guys out.
You can actually still find the exchange between, I think it was John Adams at the time was the ambassador to the Court of St. James, so the equivalent of the American ambassador to London. Who met with it's the Sultan, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy who was basically in charge of the operation at Tripoli, the slave-taking operation, and he actually asked exactly that question. We've never been involved with you. We weren't in the Crusades. Why are you attacking us?
Yes.
And he said, well, that's because it's written in the Quran that we are allowed to make slaves of infidels, and that's what we're doing. So all those people who say America is uniquely responsible for slavery, why the hell is Shores of Tripoli one of your most famous lines in a famous song?
And who were selling it, it's incredible. And who stopped the slave trade? The British did before we did, then we stopped it.
And then we did. You nailed it right there, but people are not taught that anymore. Again, we have the same Maoist constructionism going on here to deconstruct society. Since when did you have 15 million kids share a letter from Osama bin Laden? I mean, it went viral on Twitter, on TikTok, and they were actually going against their country. Look, I get along with people from all walks of life. I have friends who are liberal. I have friends who are in the middle. I have friends who are right. What I don't like are the people who hate this country, who hate Western civilization, who hate Western culture.
But
they're responsible for more progress, more freedom than any other time in history. They want to go back to the Soviet era. I mean, this is the same thing that Mao did. You understand Mao when
Struggle Sessions.
Yeah, it's Struggle Sessions, the little red book where he was saying, the 100 faces of the people who destroyed society. I mean, we have children now who hate their parents.
And those same people don't talk about the fact that there's more slaves today than ever in human history. Correct. It's insane. And they are bitching on computers that were probably built with, certain
and how much
minerals
that
remind
computers.
Right from labor that was probably slave labor that they're bitching about. And it's like they are so spoiled. They don't understand that they're taking part in the shit that they're bitching about.
Yeah, well,
their idea of communism or their utopia is like living on a farm, painting, and like lollygagging through life. It's like they are so fucking clueless and far removed from reality. But that's the way that the people who are in charge want. They want stupid people. They want people to be stupid.
Brilliantly implemented. I mean, and you can actually chart it. If you can go back about around 2012, you can see where it really started in earnest. But I think the real depressing part about all of it is that the actual process of thinking is the thing that's being turned off. The joy of discovering new ideas.
It is, because you have to kill creativity. But before we get into that, we have to, a Little Platoon has to leave. And I wanted to thank him.
Check out this bumper sticker I just found.
Hold on 1 second. Let's get little Platoon a chance. He's going to say goodbye, and then we'll
sure. Maddeningly, I do have to go. I'd love to stick around because I could talk about this stuff for hours. You have a brilliant stream with really, really great panel. I've had a great time as always. So next time you need me on, give me a shout, and I'll always be here.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Tell everybody where they can find you. What's coming up?
Yeah, the main channel is the Little Platoon. The second channel is Lost Chord. Twitter is @PlatoonPod, I think. What am I even doing at the moment? I've got an Echo video which I regret having committed to, but nevertheless, much like Marvel, sunk cost fallacy doesn't exist. I will press ahead with it. That should be out in the next few days, and after that, who knows? More stuff at some point.
I can't wait. Well, I can't wait till you come back. Also, I want to watch that Echo video. Your videos are always fun.
Yeah,
amazing. Well, thank you, Little Platoon. I hope you have a great week. Till we see you again.
Likewise. Have a good evening.
Take care.
Now let's go over.
George, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to step out too. But I just want to say, look at this awesome bumper sticker. We've been talking about Alien a lot.
Yeah. Ripley,
and I
where
just
did you get that?
Yeah, nuke 'em from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. It's a bumper sticker. I don't know where I found this.
I love it because you collect stickers.
Yeah, I recently just combined all of my stickers into one box.
Great.
This is probably around 10,000 stickers.
Wow.
I was a pro skater for a while, and like I worked at skate shops, and I had an bad addiction to collecting stickers, so I have way too many. But my future kids will love them. Anyway, guys, George, you're the best. I'll see you tomorrow on Base Staff Monday over on my channel, on the Krigler Show. And panel, you guys are great. I learned a lot. I love this stuff. I'm kind of like on the edge because I've always loved these kind of shows: Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar, Stargate. I love that kind of stuff. So it's always intriguing to hear from people who are very much more knowledgeable about inside information about this stuff. So it was really cool to just sit.
I just miss it so much, man.
Yeah.
It's great having you, Adam.
I believe it. Right on, guys. Well, cheers, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good to stream with you.
And have a
Thank
great
you.
week.
Cheers.
See you back.
Later, guys.
Bye. So we're going to read a few super chats as we start to wind down. Give me a second. Mexican Iron Man, we've had a great chat today. Tender Warrior gifted 20 Georgia Giant Slayer memberships. Thank you, Tender Warrior.
Cool.
It is beautiful. We have amazing people here. Again, we're going to be having our membership live stream coming up in the next 10 days. Curtis D. Montana for $5. I have to ask, what is your favorite 3 sci-fi movies? You can add a trilogy, George. Is it Lord of the Rings for you? Well, sci-fi. Lord of the Rings for me is my top fantasy series of all time. Sci-fi movies, I'd say Aliens would be next. Aliens franchise, and then I would have to say the Stargate movie. If we're going to go to television, if it's not only movies, then I'd go on to a couple of more. But let's move on. I have to ask, Jeremiah Hembry became a YouTube member. Thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate it. We have 200 Watt Studio for $5. ROB, I am pretty sure people in Hollywood know what good Coke is.
You know what, though? I would beg to differ sometimes.
I think, Robert, they need more drugs. Maybe they got clean, and that's the problem. Okay.
Well, I would say this. People that recreational drug use, I think passionate, creative people have various outlets.
Yeah.
They just have to be able to manage them. And a lot of the time they can't.
Well, maybe they need to get back to it. Man of War 665, Neighbor of the Beast for $6.65. Beastie Boys, Kirk on a dirt bike. Nope. And I agree 100% with you. Curtis D. Montana for $5. George, I want to thank you for helping me through my surgeries and recovery. Your story helped give me strength during my worst days. Thank you. Thank you, my friend, for your support. Always. I mean, that's the thing is we sit around here, we have a conversation. Sometimes we share pieces of our life, our story, our experience, and that helps people. Sometimes it can be entertaining. Sometimes it's just information. Sometimes it's both. And if it can inspire anyone, help anyone, pass it along to others. I appreciate it. So where do we think that Star Trek then is going to go next? Since we have Prodigy, I think Prodigy was another prime example of how it ruined Star Trek. There's no human element. It's just aliens.
Right. Well, you have Noga Landau, who is doing the Starfleet Academy. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it yesterday or the day before. Even though I don't believe anyone actually cares about Starfleet Academy, I have looked into Noga Landau and I've talked to her on Twitter, and she is a massive Star Trek fan. Okay. So she's mostly done all this young adult nonsense, like The Magicians and Nancy Drew and all that. But she is she's a real Trekkie, and I might not be interested in the content, but if you had to create a show that was for young adults, right? If that was the requirement, and it was about Starfleet Academy, she might be the perfect person to do it. Because she loves Star Trek, and that's all she's done is the CW type stuff.
I would agree with you. I don't disagree with you, but I would say the very concept of doing a Star Trek show for young adults defeats the purpose of what Star Trek is.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is being aspirational of the kind of adults we want to become. And I think that, you know, this is another problem. Taking a franchise like Star Trek and making it easier to digest. The thinking is that, hey, we're going to capture young people and we're going to make it appealing for younger people. Star Trek captured my imagination when I was 5. You know, for whatever reason, I started watching it, and it maintained its relevance for me throughout my entire life. And this idea, we have this culture, this society, and it's existed for, like, when I was growing up, when you'd watch shows like Leave It to Beaver, or The Partridge Family, The Brady Bunch, the kids were always wrong. The kids would make mistakes, and then the adults would be there to catch them,
to correct them. It's a reverse today.
I call it the Bart Simpson effect. The Simpsons flipped that script, and they made Bart Simpson this kind of, he was the smartest person on the show. His parents were idiots. And I like the Simpsons, but ever since then, what did that do? All Nickelodeon shows, every kid was Bart Simpson, smarter than the adults.
The mom and dad are fools.
Yeah.
And geniuses.
And that made, I think it wrongly. And now we have an entire generation of kids that were brought up, and they've become parents, and they've turned all of their children are Bart Simpson.
But you know what?
Modeled, they're all, and it's problematic, because the idea that kids have something to learn as opposed to kids knowing everything was something that, like, I thought I knew everything when I was in high school. Then I got to college and realized I didn't know anything.
You didn't know anything.
Kids are going to college thinking their college professors don't know anything. You need to tell me what I need to hear when I'm in students in college and the academia. Like you've got professors scared of what their kids are going to say, and colleges are treating their students as customers, which they've become.
But that's why the fact that we have all these issues. But you know what? I think this would be a great episode. I think we're going to have to do this again.
I'm going to do an episode on my own show about this very.
No, I know you are. You told me about you were going to do this before, but I think we should talk about actually how the power, because what you just hit there, I mean, you have basically the kids who are the geniuses. They're the ones who are making fools of their parents. It's the way that society and television has been treating them. And then those parents, and then those kids grow up to be parents, and they just repeat the process with their kids, except now their kids are actually hating them instead of treating them like fools. And everyone in every industry is treating everyone basically like a product. I think that a lot of that started with social media, the Facebook, the Twitter.
Well, it's analytics. Once everybody's been reduced to analytics, everything
over.
The spark of human ingenuity and the spark of creativity and the love of something for its own sake has been removed from society, and it's all been codified into analytics, which eventually, ultimately, analytics can only be predictive. What analytics can't do is tell you when that spark of creativity is going to hit, or where the power of creation is going to come into play. And that's the real problem, is that we're looking for analytics so people can make a bunch of money. But what is money? You know, money's great, but what is it ultimately? What does profit do for you? You need both. You need profit in tandem with a civilization that is also growing, because ultimately profit is maintained or created by products that creativity and a civilization that's sparked to create. It both have to work in tandem with one another. And Hollywood, by not creating new, look at John Wick. This is kind of off on a tangent, but John Wick is a new franchise property. It began very manageable. I think John Wick 1 was a $20 million movie that ended up grossing like $80 million. Big hit, ancillary markets. It sells on video like every great franchise. Something new. It didn't cost $200 million, and it gets built. 4 feature films with Ballerina, a spinoff coming out this year. The Continental TV series. Everybody loves John Wick. There's going to be as many John Wick movies as there are Indiana Jones movies if you include Ballerina in it. This was a new franchise. Why isn't Hollywood, instead of looking towards something, you know, chasing $1 billion gross, why aren't you chasing John Wick?
Well, because Hollywood is now a homeless shelter for gender studies majors and not creative. No, it is. Yeah, come on, it is.
But even gender studies majors have to turn out something good. I mean,
not up until this point. It's been rare. I mean, eventually, there's not going to be.
I think it is rare because gender studies people are only interested in their gender studies, and you put your agenda where you put your messaging before characters and stories, your stories that you're going to tell are infected by the wrong things.
Correct.
And they're never going to work.
Heart of it. We need to get back to the heart of it. Well, gentlemen, I loved having you on here. This was great. Andre, always, my friend, great respect for you. Robert Meyer Burnett. And Brian, it's your first time here. This was awesome.
I'm no longer a giant Slayer virgin.
No, you're not. But we have to do it again. Will you tell everybody where they could find you, Brian?
The PopCast. So youtube.com/the PopCast. That's our main channel. And then our live channel where we do more discussions like this is the PopCast Live. We call that Pop Culture Unleashed. We've been putting out, we would do 3 live shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m., a couple hours each time. And throughout the week, we're dropping videos and clips and stuff like that. We've been putting out a lot of content lately. We've been trying to get that channel back up to a positive flow of subscribers. Our main channel has a lot of subscribers, 120-something thousand. Sweet. That one does great. We got a lot of passive views. It's doing great. That channel is mainly for long-form documentaries. But our live channel was doing fantastic up until we got demonetized last October. And when we finally got remonetized, we were sort of in this weird holding pattern. The last couple months, we've been going really hard, and we're finally starting to see a positive number again. So it's a grind, but it's been a fun grind. So I'm loving it.
Thank you. Thank you. Andre, my friend, thank you. You've stuck it out with your cold. I hope you're feeling better.
Well, I'm actually feeling worse, but never mind that. Well, it happens. It's a cold. It'll pass.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. As always, you can find me over at Midnight's Edge. We drop videos quite frequently. We'll be dropping a new one as soon as my voice recovers sufficiently. And either way, we do live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. LA time. So do check that out. We frequently have cool guests. We need to get Robert Meyer Burnett on one of these days.
I know, and I got to get you back on Midnight Musings or something.
Just let me know. I'll be there
missed
anytime.
those old school shows. They were fun.
That was fun. That was super fun. I love doing those.
Yeah.
Y'all two together are phenomenal. Wherever you are, I mean, it is. I still can't believe it that both of y'all are on the panel, and now we have Brian. I told you, Andre, my first thing I ever heard was that intro years ago of Midnight's Edge, and then it was listening to Robert. So it's like
Midnight's Edge. That intro got me. Before I knew these guys, I was watching their channel religiously.
Yeah.
I was watching everything they put out.
He's the greatest. Robert, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, which is I thought was clever. A network, get it? Now it seems stupid, but my channel's The Burnett Work. So find me. You know, I do my show observations and Let's Get Physical Media normally, and then whatever else. But that's, find me over at YouTube. I want to try and I've been doing this for 5 years. Everybody I know is surpassing me and getting their 100,000 subscriber buttons. I feel like I haven't worked hard enough. That's my goal. I want my 100,000 subscriber YouTube button.
Well, you're going to get it. And
everybody else has one. You guys do. I just haven't worked hard enough.
No, you're doing it. You're brilliant. You're brilliant. We're going to get you there. Everybody, it's great to see you. We're going to be redirecting anybody who wants to go to Valiant Renegade stream. I never said that last time, but we're going to be redirecting you. So all those who want to join, go to Valiant Renegade. He's coming up. And I want to thank all my tireless mods from Eric K to Lord Thought. Without them, this takes a lot to run. I didn't realize it with Mexican Iron Man and in Syndek. And we have a great team, amazing people, incredible guests. And we're going to be coming back week after week. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And remember that we never bow down. We never bend the knee. Always forward.
magnificent.